Welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. Riley Knight joined by Eduardo Sajgalik for the first time today. The quarterfinals continuing down in our feature match area. Eduardo, we're going to get a chance to find out who's going to join our already semi-finalists in Andre Strasky and Oscar Christensen there. But we can have a look now at our head-to-head matchup between Andrew Cuneo and Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa. PVDDR is well known, an incredibly famous and talented player out of Brazil. Andrew Cuneo, he plays his cards a little close to the chest. One of the unsung heroes, probably the best kept secret of professional Magic right now.
A lot of top 64 finishes mean that you fly under the radar, and that's what happened a lot with Andrew Cuneo. Good win rate, but never really not often converting that. Whereas Paulo, good win rate, well,
yeah, he's a closer.
He is a closer. Two wins.
Yeah.
2 wins.
Yeah, and not very many top 16s, just a lot of top 8s, a lot of top finishes.
But what there's a lot of here is experience. Over 100 Mythic Championship. 11 Mythic Championships between the two players.
He has been around the traps. Well, both of these gens have, and they're ready to get underway with our first quarterfinal of this second of the top half of the bracket here. We've already talked about the fact that Andrew Cuneo is on a very different deck. He is playing Selesnya Adventures. Now, Eduardo, we've had a lot of adventure decks throughout the opening weeks of Throne of Eldraine Standard. Golgari's been up and about. We've had Gruul as well, but Selesnya was not the color combination I expected.
I mean, it was very big at the start of the format because it was kind of the obvious adventure deck. It was the one that was going the fastest, doing the most broken things when you did have Edgewall Keeper. But over time, Golgari Adventure kind of took over because it was playing more of a mid-range game. And then you ended up having Gruul Adventure designed by Javier Dominguez, Steph Manfield, and Martin Mueller playing at the tournament. By the way, that once upon a time really needed to get an Edgewall Keeper. Lovestruck Beast is okay, but the card that Cuneo wants more than anything else is Edgewall Keeper. Golgari Adventure can play without it, but the Selesnya Adventure deck is a very different beast.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we're seeing a pretty mediocre beatdown plan here with a 1-1 curved into a 3-1. Very different story when you've got an Edgewall Innkeeper when you're casting cards like Shepherd of the Flock, drawing cards and what have you. We've seen the explosive power of Selesnya throughout the weekend. Right now, Cuneo giving Damo de Rosa a bit of breathing space. And I tell you what, the Brazilian's going to take it once upon a time of his own here. After a Temple of Mystery, and now might be a Paradise Druid. There it is.
As Paulo alluded to in the preview, this matchup tends to favor the Selesnya Adventure deck, specifically because you're facing the Simic food version. The Sultai food version has access to Noxus Grasp, but even more importantly, potentially Massacre Girl. Simic food, a wide board, you're pretty weak to it.
Yeah, and this is the thing about Simic not having, as they mentioned at the desk, no hard answers to a lot of these problematic creatures. Here's Lovestruck Beast. He's ready to rumble. Got a little 1-1 ready to go. But Wicked Wolf is actually going to take out the human. That's a nice play from Damo de Rosa as it invalidates the offensive potential of that Lovestruck Beast.
But thankfully, Cuneo has a way to push pressure. As you can see there, Fairy Guide Mother in hand. There is an option to make, I would say here, something like the Shepherd of the Flock take to the skies, then play Fairy Guide Mother, now allowing an attack for 10. And I mean, look, Paulo's already at 15.
Already taken a little bit of a beating from those early creatures here. But, you know, look, when coming into this tournament, when coming into, you know, a Mythic Championship, one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, I really didn't expect to see quarterfinals resolved with combat tricks from Draft Chaff. I mean, you think Fairy Guide Mother's a good card in Draft. You win a lot more of it than me, so you probably know what you're talking about. But this is not a play I anticipated. Oh, I'll chuck my Shepherd of the Flock up into the air and then attack for 10 with these adventure cards. Lovestruck Beast also clipping in for 5. Damo de Rosa now in a tight spot here.
Yeah, and this is a good take from Cuneo. Essentially, you have to still build your deck to work without your flagship card. And this is a way to do it. You call it Draft Chaff, but it does work quite well together. A lot of cheap cards, power out cards like Venerated, Loxodon, wider boards, Unbreakable Formation. And here, Fairy Guide Mother would have been a problem had it not been taken down by Wicked Wolf because Paulo's at 5. Actually, the card Cuneo would want to draw more than anything here would be a Fairy Guide Mother.
Well, Cuneo certainly is running rings around his opponents with this very, very unexpected take on Standard. Oko, of course, ruling the roost, but Cuneo decided to stick with a bird of a different feather And now with Giant Killer in hand, both of those wolves, however, immune to being chopped down, as they're just 3 power creatures. So what's the attack? Cuneo can certainly get in there and rumble without too much fear of repercussion, but he wants to push through that final 5 points of damage.
Unfortunately, speaking of a 5/5 that would like to push those final points of damage, the Lovestruck Beast staying at home since we don't have access to a 1/1.
Oh, even the Giant Killer, a 1/2.
Yeah, turns out that extra toughness.
It's a downside. It's terrible. All right, Shepherd of the Flock's going to get in here. Shepherd's doing what they do best and brawling with wolves.
The flavor. But yeah, I like this play. Using the most of your resources, allowing an extra 1/1 on the table to unlock the Lovestruck Beast, and redeploying it.
Ready to go next turn as a lethal threat. Back to Damo de Rosa now, who is doing his best to manage this board, keep his snoot above water in a tricky spot here. Cuneo's hand isn't great, just a Giant Killer, but it will offer you some utility against big cards. For example, that Hydroid Krasis in Damo de Rosa's hand. Although the rest of Damo de Rosa's hand looks very good. 2 Nissa, Wicked Wolf.
And here there's a temptation to go for Nissa, set up for big Hydroid Krasis. But the biggest question on Paulo's mind is, I could do that, but potentially lose to a top deck. Like, Paulo's trying to wonder here, where am I at? Am I ahead? Because if I'm ahead, there is another line which could be to just use a Hydroid Krasis, not lose to a top deck, and then I could do Nissa down the line. Or this, but goes for the more classical, I'm going to set up a really powerful Krasis.
And we see this a lot in Standard at the moment. We see Nissa into Hydroid Krasis. That's looking to maximize the amount that you can dump into the huge X spell, gain as much life, gain as many cards as you can. Back to Cuneo now, finds a Shepherd of the Flock off the top once again.
Yeah, and that Giant Killer just rotting in Cuneo's hands with no target. The Lovestruck Beast could rumble in this time, but it just gives a clean trade against the Wicked Wolf.
Yeah.
Or the Breeding Pool if you wanted to cut access to Paulo's mana. So it's going to be really hard for Cuneo to deal those last points of damage since, you know, Green-White not exactly known for its damage reach.
And as we settle in for a bit of a longer game here, the impetus is taken away from Cuneo, who got off to an absolute flyer. As you can see, Damo de Rosa down to 5, but he's stabilized nicely, has the Brazilian, and now can move into the phase of the game known as putting Hydroid Krasis for $1 million on the stack. We may see him do that here and now with an activation of Nissa, untapping that forest, floating 2 in the pool.
The actual value of this Krasis is important because you do need to keep potentially an extra blocker. So Paulo is really considering how many cards here. We already had 2 floating from before, so we have 4, 6, 7, 8. So a 6/6 Krasis draws 3 cards. You could attack Breeding Pool for more cards, but at the stage Paulo is in, advantage as it is, well, you don't necessarily need that extra card, and you just want to make sure you're at enough life, which is 8, to not lose to Fairy Guide Mother plus Lovestruck Beast plus removal, which is a lot of cards, and make sure that you have enough defense on the ground.
Now, the critical thing here is that this Hydroid Krasis is big enough to block the Lovestruck Beast, or it would be were it not about to be chopped down. But I think that's another thing that may have gone through Damo de Rosa's head and thinking, okay, well, 6 power and toughness is what I need to contest this Lovestruck Beast.
And the reason you see a pause there is because Paulo has access in hand to... no. Okay. Well, I mean, this is just probably going to happen. No, there is an Aether Gust.
He's got an Aether Gust in hand.
Yeah. There is an Aether Gust.
So he can choose to, quote-unquote, save his Hydroid Krasis by putting it back on the top of his library if he wants to redraw it next turn. Let's see if that's the angle the Brazilian takes here.
More importantly, it also gets rid of the Giant Killer for good since it would go to the graveyard countered on resolution with no valid target. But the Aether Gust probably best served on a Lovestruck Beast against something like a top deck Fairy Guide Mother. That said, at 8 life, it's certainly an option. Even a Fairy Guide Mother would be exactly 7 damage, and then Paulo could just redeploy the Krasis.
We talk about the way that Hydroid Krasis tend to chain, right? If you play one, it tends to ultimately usually result in you playing another. It's the sort of rich get richer effect of cards like these. But here, Damo de Rosa is, I think, looking to showcase the power of chaining Hydroid Krasis. He's cast one, he's going to cast another one next turn potentially, and that means that even if Cuneo can push through damage this turn, Damo de Rosa will continue to try to stabilize the board next turn. The other key thing here, Eduardo, Giant Killer, or Chop Down more specifically, doesn't resolve. That means the Giant Killer doesn't go on an adventure.
Right, and that makes it a lot harder for Andrew Cuneo to push through damage, since at that point you can't manipulate the board state. But yeah, it's kind of sweet to see a for Gus on your own spells there.
Yeah, yep, and that's the sort of next level play that separates the wheat from the chaff here. Damo to Rosa using the cards in very inventive ways to make sure that he gets maximum value. And I think the fact that that Giant Killer isn't in the exile zone, is now in the bin, is going to be important, especially if Edgewall Innkeepers come into play, especially, as you mentioned, the board management capacity of a tapper like the Giant Killer. But let's see what the attack is now from Cuneo.
And this was the cost to doing a for Gus on your own Hydroid Crisis, because you had to tap the breeding pool. Now you're going to have to essentially block. There was an option to tap Forest and Paradise Druid, but Paulo was considering that carefully. Decides that Paradise Druid is, you know, more like, yeah, I like the, you can exchange these as you wish. But yeah, that was why you also saw the breeding pool being tapped rather than Paradise Druid. Paulo values the breeding pool in play more than the Druid.
Yes, yes, indeed, which is a weird thing when you think about tapping it like that, but he didn't want to have to block with it. So, Shepherd the Flock, the follow-up here for Cuneo. Just a Giant Killer in hand for him. He's got one remaining adventure card. Damo to Rosa, however, an embarrassment of riches. And with that Nissa going uncontested, we're going to see a huge crisis here.
It looks like X equals 8, since Paulo most likely will want to have all the lands untapped to have a full opportunity of blockers, but okay, so it seems like Paulo is okay with one less.
So, okay, think better of it.
So it is relevant because Paulo's really ahead, right? So there's not much Cuneo can do to kind of fight this low on resources. So Paulo is just trying to consider, you know what, I'm just going to take no risk here.
Yep.
It is good to go for maximum value, but sometimes at this stage, Paulo is just thinking of combinations of cards. One important detail, Nissa didn't even untap a land for that Crisis.
No.
It was kept alongside to make sure that Paulo had enough mana to deploy any cards that were drawn from the Crisis.
Thing is, Damo to Rosa has a nice full hand, and his life total is not too badly under siege here. And also now an Oko is being deployed after the Hydroid Crisis has drawn some extra cards, and a Gilded Goose. So things looking very, very good as another blocker with that Elk comes into play. So I like the way that Damo to Rosa played that. Often the temptation would just be to slam the Crisis into play for as many cards and as much life as possible. But a disciplined show of restraint from Damo to Rosa, and he's going to be rewarded for it here.
Right, and that's how you should play. When you're ahead, you should take risks. Doing a Crisis for a lot would make sense. But when you're behind, just secure the game. Don't take any risk. It's okay to draw one card or two less cards if it means that you are going to lock down.
I think you mean the exact opposite of that, right? When you're ahead, you take fewer risks, and when you're behind,
sorry, Sorry, if I said differently,
yes,
exactly. You're absolutely correct.
But this is a fundamental. This is a fundamental sort of building block of high level Magic, and we'll come back to it here. An attack from Cuneo right now for 8. Damo to Rosa, an embarrassment of blockers for him, so he can decide how he wants to line this one up. Looks like we're going to have a little trade skis on the Love-Struck Beast here, and maybe the Shepherd of the Flock will get through. But you're absolutely right. When you're behind, you have to take more risks. You have to try to get yourself back into the game and do what you can to rebuild your position. But when you're ahead, no need to risk it. No need to overextend yourself into a potential spot where your opponent might get the better of you. Here's now a Conclave Tribunal, which is going to take out Nissa, threatening to ultimate next turn.
Yeah, and Cuneo out of cards is going to have to face another Nissa Shakes the World in Paulo's hand. There's a Wicked Wolf to take care of that Giant Killer. And Cuneo's board is going to be decimated, and with it, Paulo's going to be free to attack the life total. So far, Paulo hasn't been able to leverage the Vigilance on these lands because Love-Struck Beast was kind of, staying back at bay. But now that it's gone, that damage is going to ramp up very fast.
We've seen Damo to Rosa turn the corner here after having played very defensively. And look, continuing to play defensively as well, attacking with these vigilant creatures. And now powering out even more business here. That is the business brought about by Hydroid Crisis. He's cast 2 of them, and it's not surprising to see him reaping those rewards.
Okay, so let me see what has happened since then.
Okay, there seems to be... there might have been a creature that was put away that shouldn't have been put away, since the Love-Struck Beast blocked 2 creatures. But the judges are just looking into that. So
the Love-Struck Beast was blocked by 2 different creatures.
Yeah, and there were 2 free frees against a 5/5. So one of them should have survived.
Oh, so I missed that completely. So the 5/5 actually killed the 2 3/3s. Was that
Yeah.
what happened? Oh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
obviously that shouldn't have happened. Okay, well, let's have a listen now to what the judges are discussing things.
Untap the land, attack me with 3 lands. So you could have potentially had the elk able to attack as well.
And we are in your turn.
Yes. Yeah, we just finished his attack. I went from 18 to 9.
So let me see if I can rewind that. So we need to unmake the attack. Go back to your turn. In your turn.
It wouldn't have affected any of my decisions if he had had the elk.
Yeah.
So we
So let's try to do the backup. So you drew a card this turn, right?
I did.
I'm gonna take one at random.
Okay, well, you're going to leave it on top, right?
On top. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So here's the one.
Yeah, I'm
figuring
not,
out the backup.
I'm not going to do anything on his turn.
Okay. This turn you have attack, so we need to. So I make what you did.
I played
this
a
turn.
land too, right? So this should be in my hand.
So
assuming he's just going to get the elk, we can just put them this
Yeah,
way.
if we just...
to do it, we're on commercial. Yeah. Let's
While they're sorting it out, there was no.
Yes,
You can clearly see from Cuneo's reaction there was no kind of shenanigan or enough. It's just
go to your turn.
unfortunate that it was missed, and the judge is fixing the situation. But Paulo is in my view way ahead and will be able to take this game down. I don't think there's much that Cuneo can do in a spot like this. Especially if you're going to add another free feed, put Cuneo's life total to 6, it's going to be an overwhelming board position. So once this gets fixed, I really expect to see Cuneo draw a card and we're going to move on.
But you know, this is the precision. This is the determination that judges have to ensure that things are, of course, cooked by the book. And as a result, now we head back to the original board state that we left, although just with an extra elk. This may mean 3 extra damage being pushed through by Damo to Rosa as well. But that's that's a very typical judge interaction and gives you a little bit of an insight as to how even at the top levels of play, the very highest levels of play, these sorts of issues can still arise. So back now to Damo to Rosa's combat step, and it looks like, yeah, look, the elk is going to get busy along with the rest of those creatures here.
All right, I'll get a 6.
So 3 extra damage now after we fixed up that issue with the elk surviving. Wicked Wolf taking down Giant Killer, and I don't know what card there is in this deck that is going to get Cuneo out of this, to be honest. I don't know what card there is in Magic, to be honest, that'll fix this problem for Cuneo, and he's going to pack him up. We're going to go to game number 2. Very convincing win from Paulo to Damo to Rosa. An early onslaught from Andrew Cuneo. Got off to a quick start, curved 1, 2, 3 into, you know, what, 5 life was all Damo to Rosa had left after the early turns, Eduardo. But it wasn't enough. He stabilised marvellously after those Hydroid Crazies got him back in the game. Pretty, well, I don't want to say it was a typical showing of the Selesnya deck there because really didn't have any of its powerful engine cards. But that is what you expect when it isn't able to close the deal. It's when it's unable to push through, you know, those final points of damage.
Exactly. There it was. I got a Fairy Guide Mover did a lot of damage, but without the engine card of either Venerated Loxodon or, of course, Edgewall Innkeeper, it was tough to go through. And you could kind of tell that Cuneo had mulligan to 6 and had a Once Upon a Time in hand. Didn't have much power. It was lands, Fairy Guide Mother, Shepherd of the Flock. Cuneo was really hoping, I really need Innkeeper. I really need Loxodon.
Need some of that business. Yeah.
But I got a Lost Struck Beast. I tried to work with it, but it wasn't enough.
Yep. All right, my friends. Well, that's going to do it for game number 1. We'll be back after a short break, getting ready for game number 2 between Cuneo and Paulo to Damo to Rosa. We've got another quarterfinal as well to bring you coverage of, so don't go anywhere. We're back live from Richmond after this.
I've got reigning world champion Javier Dominguez here with me to crack a pack of Throne of Eldraine. So let's go for it, Javier.
Let's see.
All right, so what color are you hoping to be if you had your choice in draft?
Green.
Green?
Definitely green, yeah.
All right.
It's definitely green. So I'm gonna look like this.
All right, we've got a Tree Folk so
Green,
far.
yeah, I like this card a lot. It is very green.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a tree after all.
Yeah. There's this one is really good. The Brimstone Trebuchet. Trebuchet?
Yeah, Trebuchet. Or Trebucket, you know, if you
Yeah.
don't say it that way, that's not how
Yeah.
you say it.
The Golden Egg. It is actually the best one of the ones we have. Like there's 3 are just like not very good. I think the egg is a card you always play in the format, so it's definitely gonna be very good. Those being installed.
No,
not
not taking that, not taking the
great.
Paladin, not the land.
Wandermare. This is a very good card in the right deck, and it's also quite green.
Okay, Wandermare, we're thinking about it. Here's Glass Casket, not
Very
bad.
good removal spell. It is not as good as it looks, in my opinion, but it's still like good. And
Sir Alan.
Sir Alan, the Lion's Claw. I think this one is probably the best card in the pack so far, but it is also like a quite expensive card, and white decks are usually like based on cheap creatures, so it's not that good. Ooh.
Ooh, Blacklands
Paragons.
Paragon is our rare.
I like this one.
Okay.
It is just like a very efficient card. Like it just a 3/1 for 2 mana, which is always a fine ratio, you know. And this is very good because it can turn any knight you have into a removal spell by getting Death Touch. So
Ooh, we've got a foil.
another
Trebuchet.
trebuchet yeah. And the basic planes. Well, I would think the pick is clearly the, you know, the Blacklands Paragon.
All right, Blacklands Paragon is
Yeah.
the pick out of this pack. What kind of deck are you hoping to make with this card?
Probably black-red knights. Black-red knights with all the, actually these ones. The
Yeah,
trebuchet.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll wheel a trebuchet.
Yeah, hopefully you wield one, maybe the foil one. You know.
All right, well, good start to the draft here.
Yep.
Sweet rare Blacklands Paragon for Javier.
And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI, live from Richmond in the United States of America. My name's Riley, joined by Eduardo Sajgalik, and we're going to head down to the feature match area as we continue our coverage of this quarter-final matchup. We've got Andrew Cuneo and Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa on one table. On the back table, it's Austin Bursavich and Sebastian Pozzo. You can see these players still shuffling up and getting ready for game number 1 here. Now, a little twist in the tail when it comes to our top 8 matches when it comes to sideboarding. You want to walk the viewers through how this one works, Eduardo?
Right, so one of the big changes for the top 8, in order to keep a similar balance to what you had in the Swiss, was to have 2 pre-sideboard games in a best of 5. This allows to make sure that people, that the games aren't overly doctored by the sideboards, and gives a chance for the main decks to shine. So both players didn't sideboard in this game. We're still on the main deck, the main 60 here. Actually, it's pretty much a repeat of game 1. Cuneo on the play, same cards.
Well, we'll see how things go in this game, but I think it's really important to note that, of course, oh, and a mulligan as well for Cuneo. Yucko, that's not a good start from him. It's important to note that top 8 matches are best of 5 or first to 3 wins, and that we do only bring sideboards in after game 3. So that means that these players will have access to only the starting 60s, as you said, Eduardo, and that's going to be a pretty key thing, key factor, a key piece of the puzzle when determining how these games play out. Cuneo looking for an aggressive start, looking to get on the board nice and early and punish any sort of fumble from Damo Rosa. But we know that the Simic food deck, it can go goose into Oko and run away with the game.
Well, we've seen it before, and
I think we're going to see it again here from Damo Rosa. No hesitation with a once upon a time, but he does have the goose and he does have the Oko in hand, so things looking very good for the Brazilian superstar.
yeah, kind of already has it all. It's the hand. I mean, you already have the goose, you already have the Oko. It's not looking so bad.
It's not looking so bad.
And the lens
for,
to cast them, it's important to note.
yeah, I mean, it is looking very bad for one player, and that player is one Andrew Cuneo, because his hand looks a little bit more like a foot at this stage, to be honest. Fairy Guide Mother, which he didn't play, Giant Killer, which he didn't play, and March of the Multitudes, which he doesn't want to play for at least another couple of turns.
March of the Multitudes, though, is one of the best cards against the Simic food decks. And we kind of had a preview yesterday in the Simic against Simic Flash. It's because it allows to go wide. So one line that doesn't involve Edgewall Innkeeper to win is to chain March of the Multitudes. One is okay, but if you chain one into the other, there's really very little that the Simic food deck can do. You have Aethergust, but apart from that, you're pretty much facing a gigantic army.
Gilded Goose, the pickup for Damo Rosa. He's going to deploy it immediately. The Goose is, as they say, out and about. So Cuneo now going to have to find some business off the top of the deck, and I don't think he's got it. Oh, this is heartbreaking here for fans of Cuneo, the American superstar.
But actually picked up that second March of the Multitudes. The reason you see Cuneo not deploy cards is not so much because Cuneo doesn't want a board presence. It's just if Cuneo top decks an Edgewall Innkeeper, that can cycle through these cards, but punished in a way for that decision by drawing Venerated Loxodon.
Which he would have been able to cast this turn and put +1/+1 counters on both the little 1/1 and the 1/2 there, Fairy Guide Mother and Giant Killer. Had he chose to deploy them, he'd be in a much better position. But even then, I mean, it's turn 2 Oko that has dominated this format all weekend, and Damo Rosa is doing it again here.
I mean, yeah, and you got some follow-up too. It's not just turn 2 Oko. It's also looking like a turn 4 Nissa who shakes the world. And I mean, there's access to an Aethergust too in De Rosa's hands, so even March of the Multitudes might be a difficult plan to pull ahead with.
You can see Damo de Rosa's hand really built to beat any situation here. Can go big with a Hydroid Krasis and a Nissa. Can continue to develop mana with Gilded Goose and Paradise Druid. And then, of course, very relevant interaction in Ether Gust against cards like Lovestruck Beast and what have you. So Oko goes up again. Going to elk the food here. And get in for 3. Let's see what the follow-up is now.
17.
A lot of mana seems like the answer to that question between Goose and Paradise Druid in hand.
Mm-hmm. So we may just see Paradise Druid here. And a land to follow things up, and another Goose. So
This is a lot of permanence for turn free. I mean,
it is indeed developing mana, prioritizing the development of mana, which makes sense. We're driving towards that that big sort of refuel play of Hydroid Krasis here. Fairy Guidemother now.
15.
And I suspect we're going to see a Venerated Loxodon. Yes, indeed.
yeah, you need to start having a board presence at some point.
Got to put some kind of pressure on here, but Cuneo is falling behind faster and faster. We might see Nissa this turn. We may just go for the Hydroid Krasis without the boost from Nissa. Either way, things looking very good for Damo de Rosa.
The only thing that would make Paulo not deploy Nissa here, because to set up the Krasis, would be considering Cuneo's hand has been really slow. Does he have access to a Conclave Tribunal? But even then, you still kind of don't lose out. Like, the Nissa's gone. Okay, I still get to do this Hydroid Krasis. You consume some food, so it might be for 1 less, but I really like here deploying the Nissa because you have access to Aether Gust, and next turn you get to deploy a really beefy Krasis and take away this game.
Yes, so it looks like Damo de Rosa agrees with you here. Here is Nissa who shakes the world. Untap that breeding pool. That means we've got Ether Gust mana ready to go, thanks to the Simic dual land.
Also gives access to food from a Gilded Goose, so you really have it all there.
And now Damo de Rosa considering what he wants to do with Oko. Going to -5. Nick that Fairy Guidemother, I should say. Back now to Andrew Cuneo, who has double March of the Multitudes, can snap one off for 3, maybe 4 if he drew a land.
Seems like a Temple Garden, so Cuneo's plan is pretty clearly going to be doing it for 4, probably on Paulo's turn.
And look, I mean, March of the Multitudes, they do synergize with each other. The first one makes the second one better, but I think Damo de Rosa is just that far ahead with his Planeswalkers and his enormous permanent count, and it's only going to get worse now. He's going to refuel with the Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, it's definitely going to get worse. Something minor, you might be wondering why exchange for Fairy Guidemother in this spot. It's a combination of things. One, it's taking 1 creature off Cuneo's board, but not so much for the board presence of that creature, but more because it helps pay for the Convoke cards like Venerated Loxodon, March of the Multitudes. The other reason to take it, it's a flyer. Paulo does flyers are that important in the matchup that getting rid of a flyer from Cuneo is really worth it. Yes.
That's very true here. So Damo de Rosa, big turn for him now.
The other thing Paulo might have spotted here is that Andrew Cuneo did not use Giant Killer on Breeding Pool. So if I was Paulo, I would put Cuneo on having March of the Multitudes, just based on that interaction alone. So I think we'll see Paulo go for the Krasis, but not maximum, making sure there's at least access to 2 mana.
So 4 in pool, 6 in pool. Untaps a Forest to put 8 in pool if that also gets tapped for mana, meaning that Damo de Rosa will be able to power out a Krasis here for 6, draw 3.
So 3.
Gain 3, of course, up to 21. So Damo de Rosa at this point in the driver's seat, full steam ahead for him. And here is March of the Multitudes, but that's just going to meet an Ether Gust.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the problem is Andrew Cuneo's draw was so slow.
And has to put it on the bottom as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to redraw it. Got a second one in hand already. 3 cards off the top here for Damo de Rosa, who has played just absolute, like just masterful Magic, as you would expect from this guy.
I mean, you also had a very powerful hand. I mean, Paulo's obviously a very good player, but this is a tale of 2 draws. Andrew Cuneo's draw was very mild and not very strong. While Paulo went turn 2 Oko, turn 4 Nissa, and now this is turn 5. Look at the permanent count.
What I want to say here about Damo Rosa's play, and this is something I think that a lot of beginner players, a lot of intermediate level players, I'm sure there are thousands of people watching who have played Magic for years and are going, yeah, of course, I would have done the same thing. And that, you know, great, well done. I'm sure your arms are getting tired from patting yourself on the back so much. But it's more the newer players, the intermediate players, the players who have picked up Arena over the last couple of months and are wondering why you don't just always put all of your mana into a Hydroid Krasis. Oh, Damo, what an idiot. He hasn't paid the full possible potential mana for his Krasis. But the thing is, disciplined play that enabled him to make sure he never fell behind. It's about securing your position once you're ahead. And Damo Rosa showed remarkable restraint in both Game 1 and Game 2, making sure he didn't give Cuneo an inch. He didn't make those easy default decisions that a lot of people kind of fall back into, Eduardo.
Right, you have access to 2 Planeswalkers. You have a ton of board presence compared to your opponent. Why risk it? You're in no danger at all. So keep that Aether Gust up. And you saw it, once that March of the Multitudes is gone, the second one isn't powered out. That meant Cuneo had to put it on the bottom and just concede to overwhelming board presence.
But I think the point here, as we head back to our back table, is just remember, you don't always you challenge established wisdom. You don't always have to do the thing that, you know, you don't always have to pay the maximum amount of mana for something like Hydroid Krasis. You just don't have to. Yeah. We're going to move to our back table now. Austin Bursavich up against Sebastian Pozzo here. You can see that Pozzo's been around the traps a little more than Bursavich. But both of them here in their first top finish at a Mythic Championship. And we look to be already well and truly into game number 2 here. Pozzo taking out game number 1.
Pretty important little interaction there. Vraska destroying Oko Fief of Crowns. And still sticking around in order to draw cards. There's an extra food token. And Vraska plus Oko is quite the combo, being able to draw a card. However, it seems like Pozzo is at least a game up. So trying, and we already see a Brazen Borrower on an adventure.
Here's another Oko from Pozzo, the Argentinian, continuing to use what is undoubtedly the best card in Standard right now. The Elk going after Vraska, looking to dethrone her as the Golgari Queen.
Yeah, and that was a really, that was actually pretty important, because there's an option for Austin to block with Gilded Goose and protect the Vraska, but seeing the hand for Bursavich, that's a lot of spells. So I would just expect this Vraska to go away for that reason. You need mana to deploy those spells, and the important choke point is 6 mana. Once you get to 6 mana, that's Hydroid Krasis for X equals 4, that's drawing 2 cards, and that's establishing yourself in a game.
So Bursavich, as I'm sure everyone has noticed by now, is on Sultai food, whereas Pozzo just on the straight-up blue-green Simic. Oh, sorry, green-blue, excuse me.
And here, it's actually a pretty difficult line. Austin could just straight up go. The most powerful play Austin has available is to go Nissa, untap Overgrown Tomb, Noxious Grasp, and Noxious Grasp, most likely Oko Fief of Crowns here. And that would be the most powerful deployment of resources available. But it does leave the Nissa potentially at risk from this Elk.
So going upstairs now, Pozzo going to be knocked down to 17, and this pretty clearly indicates that Noxious Grasp is in the future of that Thief of Crowns. Yes, there it is.
Yeah, and with Sebastian Pozzo just having free lands, can't really punish Austin here. The biggest danger was a Nissa coming down and attacking Nissa Who Shakes the World plus the Elk, or an Oko, but neither of these cards can really pressure the Nissa. So, I mean, if Austin gets to untap with that Nissa Who Shakes the World in play, Pozzo is in a lot of trouble. And thankfully, drew a Gilded Goose. Now, that may not look that great, but with access to 2 Aether Gust, being able to develop mana is important. Obviously, a untapped blue source would be the best, because then Pozzo could Aether Gust the Nissa, plus have an Aether Gust ready for it coming back down.
So Aether Gust is going to send Nissa upstairs, downstairs in my lady's chamber. Let's have a look on top. All right.
Very importantly, no food available for Austin, so that Nissa cannot be recast. So that was actually a pretty big cost on Austin's side to decide to put a Nissa on top, and just shows the power of that card in this matchup.
Pozzo also no extra lands for him now as he plays Gilded Goose and an Elk, his only creatures.
So there are a few lines available for Austin. Kind of a lot of the power of Austin's deck is in hand. Could go for Oko, have a high loyalty walker, generate food for Gilded Goose, which is the line taken. The alternative was to do something like Wicked Wolf to get rid of Pozzo's Gilded Goose, just because, again, Pozzo missed a land drop a few times, so that would have been a way to deprive mana. But Austin just trying to cement that board position.
Oko playable, of course, thanks to the blue mana of Paradise Druid. And now in a firm position with the Thief of Crowns online once again. Let's have a look at what Pozzo is doing here with Wicked Wolf in hand, Nissa and Aether Gust also at the ready. But, I mean, just cannot cast that. Nissa hasn't been able to find the lands for it.
Right, but here it's possible thanks to that Gilded Goose last turn and the Forest Drawn, so Nissa Who Shakes the World can't come down.
Oh, did find a forest off the top. Okay, that definitely changes things.
Right. The most powerful play that Pozzo would have access to is something like Nissa, untap Breeding Pool, and have access to Aether Gust. But it's actually not that simple because doing it on Oko is it's not necessarily that great of a threat right now, and if players can get rid of Planeswalkers without having to expand cards, that's a much better proposition.
Yeah, the good old-fashioned way actually attacking them. We don't see that too much with the highly defensive nature of a card like Oko, enormously high loyalty, ways to defend itself. But Pozzo managed to sneak in 3 damage with that Elk. Now let's see what the next move is for the Argentinian. Once again, let's remind ourselves, Wicked Wolf and Nissa in hand. And Wicked Wolf can act as a bit of a stone rain here. I kind of like that. Go after that overgrown tomb and prevent... we know that Bursavich has the Nissa in hand. That's going to set Bursavich back another step in terms of getting there.
Actually, the Paradise Druid is just cleanly available, which would keep the food for the Gilded Goose.
Better.
And the Stone Rain plan makes a lot of sense. You know there's a Nissa stuck in Austin's hand. Austin's been missing land drops. Yeah, I really like this.
Really like it, absolutely. There was the option to go for the Overgrown Tomb, grow the Wicked Wolf with the food, but as you mentioned, that's just a clean Doomblade effect here.
And Austin draws another Nissa Who Shakes the World. Now Austin is in
very bad
danger.
Yep. Looking very bad here.
Has access to Noxious Grasp in hand, which does buy time, but all Pozzo wants to do is untap. Having access to something like Brazen Borrower, let's say if a blue source untapped happened with Aether Gust, would be a nice aggressive play because that would let Pozzo have tempo. Brazen Borrower doesn't get killed by Noxious Grasp, so if Oko was off the table thanks to an attack, then Brazen Borrower can come down and threaten any future Planeswalkers. And that's really the power of that adventure card, is that it's a free 1 flyer. And in these matchups, flying really matters.
The other thing that really matters, and I want to harp on about this a little bit, of course, look, there's no denying the format is defined by and dominated by Oko, but one thing that really sets this format apart from other formats where there's been cards of dominance, I'm thinking about Hazoret, I'm thinking about Aetherworks Marvel, is that decisions really, really matter in these matchups. That decision that Bursavich made to put his Nissa on top of his library is punishing him to the extreme here. And this is something that I think is a real point of difference when it comes to Oko. Yep, the cards everywhere, but the matches, even Oko on Oko, are super, super interesting.
And here, there's something that opened up for Pozzo because Austin decided to turn the food into an Elk. Now there's no food available. Technically, Austin's going to be able to make one at the end with Gilded Goose, but the Aether Gust becomes a lot more powerful in a spot like this because you're consuming Austin's resources at a fast rate. So Pozzo here, the plan for Pozzo is just, how can I leverage my board position in such a way that not only do I get rid of what's in play, but any future Planeswalker is immediately under pressure.
And this is something I want to point out as well about this Aether Gust here. Almost certainly, the fact that Bursavich keeps bricking on land means that if Pozzo Aether Gusts anything, it's almost certainly going below decks. Bursavich needs to draw a land. He can't afford to redraw an Oko or a Gilded Goose or what have you. So here, Pozzo is looking at a card which is basically a Terminate or a Vindicate almost in blue. That's very powerful.
I mean, I like that. That's a nice
You'd play a
effect,
blue Vindicate?
Yeah, that's
Blues-
exactly.
Blue's got enough as it is. Let's not get in. Blues are drawing cards, countering stuff. When a green major's going to get anything?
How shall I put this?
I guess like right now. Yeah, probably. Probably that's a fair assessment. All right, these two creatures going after Oko. I love this attack here from Pozzo, getting on the front foot, making Bursavich answer the question. Hey, buddy, what are you going to do about this, my friend?
And that Wicked Wolf is very indestructible. With access to Gilded Goose, there's at least the option to have 2 food in play. So if Austin decides to go for something like that Noxious Grasp on Wicked Wolf, then you can make a food in response. It doesn't end so well for Austin in this spot. But really the reason we're seeing this board state switch into Pozzo's favor was that mana denial plan.
Yeah.
Getting rid, because I said fine matters, what matters even more is mana, especially at this stage of the mid game.
And Pozzo is doing a masterful job of maintaining an enormous amount of pressure, not only on Bursavich's board and his non-land permanents, but also his mana. Away goes Oko, that food token trading for an Oko, basically by putting an extra +1/+1 counter on the Wolf. And what we're going to see here, I'd bet my bottom dollar, we're going to see Nissa untap Breeding Pool and Ether Gust on the Gilded Goose.
But that was actually a dangerous play there. By doing Nissa, that
opens himself up to that Noxious Grasp. All right.
Thankfully, though, for Sebastian Pozzo, that means that the Gilded Goose cannot produce a food. That means we're still stuck on free mana. And it's none of the blue variety either.
So that is almost not quite as good as that Ether Gust would have been, because it does allow Bursavich access to a fresh card, but still very good for Pozzo, and Bursavich bricks again. This one is falling further and further away from the American as Pozzo has continued to just put his best foot forward, and now that Ether Gust plan is still live.
Yeah, and here we're probably going to... Pozzo's plays are going to start being more and more scripted, since Pozzo did all the hard work in the last decisions. Yeah. Now it's just pressure.
Yep.
Paradise Druid, keep Aether Gust up with Breeding Pool and the lands. If not, you have the option to make food with Gilded Goose. And then after that, you got Aether Gust, you got Brazen Borrower, and you're going to try to get them across the finish line, while Austin is so low on resources.
So right now, a food being made by the Gilded Goose here. Interesting, Pozzo lets Bursavich untap. Let's see if he can find that 4th land. Oh, no. Another Whiffsky here from Bursavich. This is a nightmare scenario for him.
There was definitely a possible play here by going Aether Gust on Gilded Goose, but I think Pozzo is more wants to Aether Gust whatever spell comes in the way rather than the mana source, because there's enough pressure on the table. If there was a little less pressure, it might make sense to make it earlier. The Goose would go, as you mentioned, below decks. But there was definitely a consideration there. But that option to make a food with Goose is too important. What Pozzo wants to do is give the maximum amount of options. By going Aether Gust on Goose, you might open yourself up to Noxious Grasp on Wicked Wolf. And that balance of trade-off meant that Pozzo prefers not to do so.
This is desperation mode here for Bursavich, however. Hydroid Crisis for 2, drawing 1 card. That is how much Bursavich needs to find a land. I think he's got one. There it is. Still not a blue mana. That Gilded Goose is more or less his only hope in terms of gaining access to blue. But now Pozzo, firing on all cylinders, creates a food with his Gilded Goose, finds a Brazen Borrower off the top. That's another fantastic tempo card here. The Argentinian going to be able to continue to pressure his opponent, Eduardo, with a card like Brazen Borrower.
And here, I mean, there's no food. So you get to attack. That Hydroid Crisis could block the Brazen Borrower, but yeah, you have access to both Brazen Borrow and Petty Theft. I think Pozzo's got this one pretty much locked down.
Yeah, looking really, really good for Sebastian Pozzo right now. He'll be sitting pretty. A bunch of instant speed options for him. He can cast that Brazen Borrower off of the Gilded Goose. Another land off the top here for Bursavich now. So he's finally starting to draw out of those mana issues that he was having. But is it too little too late here, Eduardo?
For sure. Like, it's not even... There's not really an option in Bursavich's hand. It's Nissa Who Shakes the World or... nothing. You could make a food and gain free life. That's not getting you anywhere. I think Pozzo's virtually got this game locked up. You can Aether Gust, the Nissa Who Shakes the World. That's going to go below, but then you can Brazen Borrower, and that's going to kind of be it.
Or not even a chance for the Nissa to hit the battlefield before it's put on top of the library of Bursavich, and he recognizes that is that. Sebastian Pozzo moves to 2-0, just 1 game away from a semi-final appearance. And Bursavich will be kicking himself after a series of unfortunate draws, and of course that decision early on to put the Nissa back on the on top of the library. And this is what I want to touch upon again. Decisions in these mid-range slugfests, they matter, and they come back to bite you on the bum if you don't navigate them correctly.
Yeah, and there we saw that decision, putting it on top, deciding, you know what, I'm a little tight on mana, but I think I can make it work. Pozzo capitalized.
Yeah, couldn't
the
make it
Wicked
work.
Wolf on Paradise Druid, just playing that Stone Rain / Fret, and then took over.
Yep, and it was masterful stuff from Pozzo. We're going to see more of that, I'm sure. But right now, we're going to take a quick break, get things set up. We'll be back with Cuneo versus Damo de Rosa in just a few moments.
We've got Martin Mueller here to crack a pack of Throne of Eldraine and tell us his pack one, pick one. So let's do it. Open her up.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so what are your favorite colors in this draft format?
I don't think I have like any favorite colors. I feel like white has been underdrafted slightly, so I'm feeling pretty good about getting good white deck, because it's not it's pretty often that you get like good cards pretty late.
And here we've opened a Doom Foretold, which does happen to be in white. Do you like this card?
I do not like it that much. I could see playing it if you like can build your deck around it, but it's a multicolored card, and I don't think the payoff is high enough that I would look to take it right here. What I'm like looking at here, I think Reef Soul is pretty strong, Order of Midnight and Keeper of Fables. I like the clear free cards that stand out. There's some concern about picking up black card now that there's like a pretty solid second good card here in black, but I still think I would go with the Order Midnight. It's just like a solid evasion creature, even if you didn't have the added value of returning a creature. And like a Gravedigger has always been a really strong card in Limited. Add that to a flyer and even some extra flexibility in terms of when you want to cast it, or like if you just want to play it on turn 2 as a beater, definitely makes that a strong card, and I think that would easily be my pick here.
I've got to ask though, this seems like a pretty solid removal spell. Why you're picking the creature instead?
I think the removal spell is definitely solid. It's not as like there's better removal spells like Bake into Pie, and I think this is a solid uncommon that the kind of value and innovation you get in one card, you can't really find that at common level. So I would go for the uncommon here.
All right, Order of Midnight, the pack one, pick one here. Pretty good card.
And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI Friday night, joined by Eduardo Sage Gallic, and our quarterfinals are well and truly underway. We've already unveiled 2 of our semi-finalists. We'll be joining Oscar Christensen and Andre Strasky in the semis once we've determined their opponents, one of whom will be either Andrew Cuneo or Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa. You can see them there, and here are the cards that are now coming into play with the sideboard matches from game number 3 onwards, sideboard games, I should say. Here's what Andrew Cuneo has got to work with against Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa's food deck. What do you like here?
Almost nothing. And the reason for that is very clear. If you think there's a lot of food decks in the tournament, you're going to configure your main deck for it.
That's a great point.
So Gideon Blackblade on the play could be an option because it does overpower the food tokens, but something like a Brazen Borrower might be enough to make it too slow. You want to stay, especially against the Simic decks, go wide. And none of these options really help you go wide. Something like God Eternal Loketra, you might think, sure, but you're facing Oko, Thief of Crowns. Glass Casket seems great against Gilded Goose, but you got Paradise Druid, and not really much else to target.
God Eternal Elketra? Huh? Like an elk?
You can go on the Conclave
Like
trap,
an
you know,
elk?
it has judged you. You're the goblin in that
Like
scenario.
an Elketra? Great stuff from me today. All right, here's what Simic Food Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa's deck is looking like here, and he's definitely got some better options.
Yeah, I mean, here we're looking for board presence. Voracious Hydra, board presence where you can destroy a utility creature, gives finally Paulo in the post-board game an answer that's clean against Edgewall Innkeeper. Crashing Brontodon can be okay just because of the body, because it can get a Conclave Tribunal. But generally, I'd say both players sticking relatively even as they were pre-board. It's just that the Hydras, even with 2 of them, really make a difference because of the card Once Upon a Time. 2 copies with Once Upon a Time, much higher chance of getting it.
Absolutely. We're going to kick things off with Cuneo and a Flower Flourish, picking up a Plains from his library. A forest, excuse me. It was cast off of that Plains.
Yeah,
And Cuneo is, well, let's have a look at what he's working with here. with an Edgewall Innkeeper, the pickup in, I think he either had that in his opening hand or just drew it. However, without the green mana, he wasn't able to cast on turn number 1. But turn number 2, Edgewall Innkeeper, still going to be good, especially if he finds a way to make use of it. Ooh, no Fairy Guide Mother or anything. But Damo Rosa is going to look at that and be like, right, that is a threat, I need to deal with it.
But thankfully, Andrew Cuneo had access there to Shepherd of the Flock in case there was an issue that turn. And now we're going to see Cuneo finally live the best life of the tavern by drawing cards.
Oh, and there it is, Fairy Guide Mother as well. Oh, my goodness me. By the beard of Odin, I'm absolutely loving this. Oh, I love it, and more adventure cards as well, ready to get that value. And look at this from Cuneo. This is huge. This is so huge, Eduardo.
What a play. Cuneo deciding, you know what, rather than drawing a card with my free 1 creature right away, I'm just going to set up my board to have a Lovestruck Beast later. More importantly, I have 1 white mana to protect Edgewall Innkeeper from this
Voracious Hydra. Oh my goodness, masterful, absolutely masterful from Andrew Cuneo. We talk about next level plays. I don't know on which level this one was, but being fully aware of a 2-of in Damo Rosa's sideboard, Cuneo made a highly unorthodox play and has been absolutely rewarded for it. Now he still has to face down the Hydra, obviously as a 1/2. It's not too much of a threat, but still, just completely ameliorating one of the huge cards that Damo Rosa brought in post board. 200 IQ play from Andrew, 300 IQ play from Andrew Cuneo.
If you want to go even higher, this turn is going to be extremely difficult. Andrew Cuneo has the choice between deploying the board, going something like Edgewall Innkeeper, Shepherd of the Flock, keeping the card, while first going for Flower for a Forest, keeping the flow of cards. There is an alternative, which is Conclave Tribunal on that Paradise Druid, but I actually believe we're going to see it all. Andrew Cuneo can go Edgewall Innkeeper, Shepherd of the Flock, that's 4 creatures, and then Conclave Tribunal on Paradise Druid would really set Paulo back.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. That means that Damo Rosa's mana isn't going to be as reliable. He's not going to be able to cast that turn 4 Nissa or what have you. He does have a Nissa and a Forest in hand, so he can do that. And for this reason, I mean, look, Cuneo just wants to spend the maximum amount of mana every turn, and he's doing that now, of course, drawing a card, and now...
Oh, and also drew a really good one at that. Unbreakable Formation is going to allow Cuneo to really build a board in the future turns with March of the Multitudes and Formation.
Yep, that's going to be huge here. March of the Multitudes, of course, making all those 1/1s, Unbreakable Formation, turning them into 2/2s. In comes the Guide Mother, and so now are we not going to see the Conclave Tribunal here?
So Cuneo here decided, you know what, I'm going to save this Tribunal for a problematic permanent rather than denying Paulo, Vitor, Damo Rosa's mana. And I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out as a result.
Damo Rosa does have the option to deploy Nissa, 2 copies of which he has in hand, in addition to Hydroid Krasis. We often see these 2 act as a 1/2 punch. The jab with the left, in comes the Nissa, and then the cross with the right, with an enormous Hydroid Krasis the next turn. Let's see if Cuneo, however, can dance around those blows and maybe stick up his dukes and weather this particular storm. He does have Conclave Tribunal to knock out that Nissa. Let's see what his next move is here. I'm very curious.
With Venerated Loxodon on the pickup, there's actually a lot of options for Cuneo. The most heavy power one this turn would be something like Unbreakable Formation plus Venerated Loxodon. But then that unlocks a ton of mana on Paulo's side, and I think that's a little too much mana. So for Cuneo, it's going to be about that balance. It's going to be, how can I develop my board position to a state where Paulo just cannot come back while dealing with a problematic permanent like Nissa who shakes the world?
Now, no land in hand is awkward here for Cuneo. I think he would have enjoyed picking up an extra land there because he's only got, between his Convoke cards and his lands, he's only got access to 8 mana. So this costs an effective 4, right? Because he can cast the Conclave Tribunal for 5, and now he's got access to Convoke mana.
This is a big play. You get to deploy your board and next turn deal a lot of damage. There was also the option here to go for Venerated Loxodon, but you see the respect for Nissa who shakes the world.
Well, I mean, he could have gone... No, he was one short of going Venerated Loxodon into Conclave Tribunal. But now, with this card, the way that he's built this board out, I mean, even if Damo Rosa plays another Nissa next turn, he's going to be able to... Cuneo is going to be able to punish him to the max with that Unbreakable Formation.
Right, that's going to be enough damage to get rid of the Nissa. Cuneo is going to be able to essentially make sure that the attack kills Nissa, who shakes the world, have a large board that Paulo cannot deal with.
No.
Because it's straight Simic colors. It's not something like a Massacre Girl. There isn't a board wipe. And then post-combat play Venerated Loxodon and pretty much lock down the game.
Cuneo here is playing at lightning speed. He knows exactly what's next on the menu. Off the top, I don't know what cards he could draw that might change his plan here.
The only things that might be drawn and change the plan are things that are even more powerful than what we have.
Which is a high bar to clear, Eduardo. I will say this. Unbreakable Formation threatens to push through an attack for a stonking great huge pile of damage. Conclave Tribunal, I think, was the rip. That's also a nice one as all of the creatures gain vigilance. Oh, no, it was Edgewall Innkeeper, excuse me. All right. I missed all that.
It's kind of nice. It's an additional creature for to make a 2/2, and then you have a Divination hanging on the side in that Love Struck piece. So all things going up Cuneo this game.
Yeah.
But honestly, it wasn't needed. It could have been a land. It could have been a blank piece of cardboard. Unbreakable Formation plus Venerated Loxodon are going to get rid of this Nissa who shakes the world, create an untenable board position in Andrew Cuneo's favor, and probably lock down the game in short order.
All right, let's see if we've got enough dice to cover off all of these creatures here as Cuneo pumps them all up. 1/1s gaining dice all over the place. Look at this. He's almost doubled the amount of power he had in play here. Very close to it, at least. Shepherd of the Flock, the only creature that wasn't a 1/1 before this transaction began. Let's get in with all of these, says Cuneo. Now, Damo de Rosa can block, of course, but it's not going to do anything. These creatures are all indestructible.
Is it actually? I don't think this is lethal yet, but maybe Cuneo decided to put everything at Paulo because even though it's not lethal, it will very certainly be next turn.
Maybe the thinking is even with that Nissa, there's not enough damage that you can do to my board position next turn. There's no sweeper. There's no Cyclonic Rift. There's nothing that means that Damo de Rosa in his colors is going to be able to deal with this go-away strategy. That's one of the things that Cuneo has relied upon all weekend.
Right, and when you look at this, that's why Selesnya Adventure is much better against the Simic food decks than the Sultai ones. The Sultai ones, Noxus Grasp, especially Massacre Girl with the combination of Once Upon a Time. Simic, when the board state is this wide, you cannot catch up.
No, that's the thing. There's just not a card that enables you to get back into this game here. Cuneo taking no casualties there, of course. His creatures all indestructible thanks to that Unbreakable Formation, so sticking around even in the face of those 3/3s. And Damo de Rosa, he's got a huge uphill battle now, and Cuneo's just going to make it even worse now with all these creatures becoming 3/3s. He's attacking for 500,000 next turn, if not 3/4.
I mean, there's 11 creatures, so the minimum amount of damage coming through from the unblocked creatures, if Paulo added 2, looks to be 10. And with Paulo at 7, that pretty much spells it.
In hand for Damo de Rosa, looks like it's a copy of Hydroid Krasis and an Oko as well. But I think even the Mighty Thief of Crowns is not going to be able to break up this particular Beatles here. Because Cuneo has so much damage available to him. Damo de Rosa going through the motions, puzzling it out. Is there anything I can do? He's asking himself. Is there anything I can do to get myself off this sticky wicket? But I don't know that there is because this is just such an overwhelming army here.
It looks like Paulo needs to generate almost 7 full blockers to kind of survive the turn. And even then, you're losing your lands in the process because you have to block most of these free lifelinkers. So I think Cuneo's pretty much locked this down with a direct attack on Paulo.
Here's the Hydroid Krasis. That's going to be cast for 3.
Yeah, when you have a number like that, that's generally not a player desiring to do it.
No, that's not drawing 3 cards. That's a literal Hydroid Krasis for 3 +1/+1 counters, and it is not enough as Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa goes down to Andrew Cuneo in game number 3. And this is what we wanted from Selesnya Adventures. This is what we expected. Huge big board presence, Edgewall Innkeeper firing things off, Venerated Loxodon, March of the Multitudes to go wide. Much, much better stuff from Cuneo there.
Yeah. When we saw the previous 2 games, Cuneo's deck kind of didn't do much. Paulo's deck really firing on all cylinders. But that was really why you want to play Selesnya Adventures deck, a draw of that nature.
Back to our second table here with Austin Bursavich and Sebastian Pozzo. Let's kick things off by having a look at Bursavich's sideboard. So he's on Sultai food, whereas Pozzo is on Simic food. And what adjustments are you going to make post-board here?
It's actually pretty techy in a matchup like this. Something like Veil of Summer being a good example. Because Sebastian Pozzo has access to Aether Gust, the dynamic of Veil of Summer and Aether Gust, when you're counting an Aether Gust on something on the board, it's great, but it doesn't stop an Aether Gust on the stack. So we're probably going to see something like Aether Gust, maybe that Massacre Girl, because you want that opportunity to be able to get it. But we're going to see a few ins and outs, but mostly stick similarly.
Here's Pozzo's sideboard as well. A lot of those interactive options, Veil of Summer, Mystical Dispute, Disdainful Stroke, characterizing post-board games. What are you expecting to see in game number 3?
On Pozzo's side, the Veil of Summer's way stronger. Noxious Grasp is a card, a 4 of in Austin's deck, and that's one of the best possible counters to it. We might see some of the variety of these fight creatures in Crawl Harpooner or Voracious Hydra to try to take down the mana creatures. Mystical Dispute on the draw we'll certainly see in because it is one of the few cards that can counter a turn 2 Oko on the draw.
Well, let's begin now with Austin Bursavich facing off against Sebastian Pozzo. These fellas are in game number 3. Pozzo has won 2 on the bounce and is kicking things off with a Once Upon a Time into Gilded Goose, excuse me. So cast the Goose, mirroring the beginning from Bursavich here.
And the beginning seems to be everybody's favorite Fief of Crowns. Some may say the only Fief of Crowns.
No, in my case, it definitely, well, depends. Well, I mean, long may she reign, may I say that first of all. But she also, I mean, she gained a crown by nefarious purposes. Whether you call that theft or not is just various shades of grey. But Oko certainly at the moment, the one in the public consciousness, the forefront of the public consciousness, yes.
Yes, I know you are a history.
There's been many crowns stolen over the years, Eduardo. Takes me back to an interesting story from the 13th century, actually. I want to start, well, maybe we can get to that later. But what I want to talk about right now, Pozzo's hand is looking very good indeed. He's got the turn 2 Oko. He's got a Veil of Summer. But he's passing the turn here without wanting to cast the Thief of Crowns. Double Hydroid Krasis in hand. I'm interested to see what his line is here.
2 things here from Sebastian's side. It's keeping the main line is to keep Veil of Summer protecting Oko, but what Sebastian Pozzo is hoping for on top of this is that Austin Bursavich doesn't run out something that would be problematic, like a big permanent, just because you're afraid of seeing an Aether Gust on your spell, losing the tempo, and then losing that tempo battle.
Here's another Gilded Goose now for Bursavich. His hand looking a little weaker. He also has a Veil of Summer, but has a Hydroid Krasis to go with it. That Gilded Goose freshly played here.
And
so let's see what the next move is now from Bursavich.
Austin's plan is pretty definitely going to be to aim towards a 4/4 Hydroid Krasis on turn 4, reload, refuel, and put pressure on an opponent that just passed the turn on turn 2.
Oko up to 7 now, attacking in for 3 with that food token generated last turn. And now the Goose makes a food on Pozzo's side of things. Wicked Wolf, the draw. Starting to fall a little bit behind, though, here.
Wicked Wolf is a really interesting draw. Oko would have been in trouble here. Veil of Summer could have protected it, but Austin Bursavich able to put pressure since Oko has been in play longer, able to make else that can put pressure on the Planeswalker. With Wicked Wolf, Sebastian Pozzo might have a different consideration because with access to 2 food, that's a way to put pressure. But I kind of like this. Make sure to maximize the value of Veil of Summer. Of course, Pozzo can't know that Bursavich doesn't have access to Noxious Grasp, but I appreciate playing around it in a spot like this.
So Pozzo took to his second turn off rather than casting a Thief of Crowns there. He kept the Oko for turn number 3 so as to keep up that Veil of Summer, as we said. Here's another food token now for Bursavich, who looks to be in a commanding position. His hand a little lacking. He's only got the Hydroid Krasis Veil of Summer remaining. Pozzo got all sorts of goods still remaining in his hand. 5 cards in there. But Bursavich definitely has the board advantage here, Eduardo.
Yes, definitely. I mean, just more permanent, straight up. That said, there is a difficult decision for Austin Bursavich here. Right now, Austin can make a Hydroid Krasis for 4. But that would require both food tokens there, which means 1 less elk to put pressure on Sebastian Pozzo's Oko Fief of Crowns. And there is also the exchange possibility here, which is why one of the reasons Sebastian Pozzo has Veil of Summer. It's in order to maybe counter that -5. So Austin Bursavich is going to have to make that difference between deploying the largest threat possible and keeping the ball rolling with a 4-4 Hydroid Krasis or putting pressure on Oko. But because Oko can't really go away this turn, there's no way really for Austin Bursavich to do so. It makes more sense in my view to make a Hydroid Krasis at X equals 4 and keep the pressure up while deploying a threat, a big flyer, on top of reloading.
Speaking of reloading, here is this Hydroid Krasis now, eating up those foods from the Golden Goose. And a Krasis for 4, gain 2, draw 2. Bursavich once again cementing his position on board. It's up to Pozzo now to try to get his foot back into this particular door before it slams shut. Back to Pozzo. Couple of lands in hand, double Krasis, as well as that Veil of Summer. And of course, let's not forget about the Wicked Wolf.
Pozzo might take a little bit of time to think through the play, but it's pretty definitely going to be a Wicked Wolf. It's just a clean... Hydroid Krasis, again, you want to wait until X equals 4, and doing Wicked Wolf allows you to keep up Veil of Summer. So most likely, this makes sense. Make a food to make sure the Wicked Wolf is relatively immune to something like a Noxus Grasp. And take down here the Hydroid Krasis makes also a lot of sense. Austin Bursavich already has access to kind of a lot of mana. There's not much you're denying here. Getting rid of the 4-4 flyer, the right play in my view.
Now, of course, here the Wicked Wolf made indestructible, as well as getting that +1/+1 counter by the sacrificing of the food. So away goes the Krasis, and that means that Gilded Goose is still available to cast Veil of Summer. Pozzo has demonstrated, Eduardo, that he values this card so highly. We have seen him leave it up. Like he's telegraphed very clearly that he's holding it. But that's the name of the game, baby. He's so determined to get value from that Veil of Summer and make sure Bursavich doesn't get away with murder here.
And the main thing for me here is Pozzo's doing this because if one player has a Planeswalker for a large number of turns and the other doesn't, the player with the Planeswalker is most likely going to win the game. And Pozzo cannot really deal with a high loyalty Oko cleanly. An Aether Gust could work, but you know there's Veil of Summer. You know it's going to be difficult to get rid of it. Maybe not possible. So at this point, we're looking at a game where both players have it, but only because Pozzo engineered the situation to always keep up Veil of Summer. And the real test is coming next turn, because if Pozzo has the option to make a Hydroid Krasis for 4, do you respond? And here we see Austin Bursavich drawing that Noxus Grasp, ready to essentially do this exchange in order to lock Pozzo out of mana. It made sense for Pozzo not to tap that Gilded Goose because you want, not because of the access to Veil, but because you wanted the food for Wicked Wolf. But that means that Sebastian Pozzo's Oko is going to be at risk, and Austin Bursavich will take it down and be the only one left with an Oko.
This is a huge brain play here from Bursavich. So what he's done, he's activated the Oko to take control of the Gilded Goose in exchange for the food. That means that Pozzo is in a very tough position. He has to either fire off the Veil of Summer straight away, in which case Bursavich can respond with a Noxious Grasp, or he just loses the Goose, in which case he can't cast the Veil of Summer anyway. So really, really clever stuff from Bursavich.
The funny thing here is normally if Bursavich answers with Noxious Grasp, Veil of Summer, when it resolves, will still allow Pozzo to draw a card. And this way...
Right now it won't. If it just resolves right now, it won't draw a card. So Bursavich has to decide whether he wants to fire off that Noxious Grasp or not. But no, he's not going to. That's incredible. Wow. All right. So just 5 loyalty removed from Oko for no real value. But conversely, Pozzo didn't draw the extra card.
That said, a very heads-up play from Bursavich. There's only 3 Veil of Summer, so it's unlikely that Pozzo has access to another one. Of course, if there was another one, that would be an absolute blowout in Pozzo's favor. But Bursavich decides to play the percentage play here to make sure that Pozzo is down a card.
And he's going to be rewarded for it as well, with Pozzo not having a second copy of the Veil of Summer there. So Bursavich does get away with it, fires off that Noxious Grasp, and away goes Oko. Back to Pozzo now, who finds a Temple of Mystery off the top. He does have the option to cast a Krasis for 1 card for where X equals 2, or maybe even 3. I don't love that.
No, and I don't think Pozzo's going to like it either. we're most likely going to see a turn with Pozzo passing, maybe taking a bit of time to, not Hollywood, but say I might have something different in hand. And we're likely going to see Temple of Mystery, make a food with Gilded Goose, and set up for the next turn Crisis.
So the Goose jumping in the way of the Wolf here to protect Oko.
And that was the kind of reward, right? The -5 ability of Oko is one of the few ways that players can then reverse course on the loyalty total.
Yeah, I like that. It's like the best way to kill your opponent's Oko is have them ultimate it. That's pretty cool. All right.
It's actually true. That's why we haven't
Temple of
seen many
Mystery.
exchanges, actually, in the tournament.
On the top of Pozzo's library, that is a Veil of Summer. He may want to keep that one there, yes, because next turn he's going to be able to fire off a Crisis and keep up mana to protect it, perhaps?
Absolutely. There's a breeding pool in hand.
Yeah.
With the Goose making food, that's 7.
Yep. So the Goose can make a food this turn, and that'll mean that Pozzo will have a total of 7 mana next turn to fire off. And again, we talk about that sweet spot. Generally, you want to cast the Hydro Crisis for X equals 4, so you can draw 2 and gain 2. Anything above that, of course, is also very good. But below that, it's pretty unimpressive. I think if Pozzo didn't have the land in hand, this would be a much weaker play. Casting a Crisis for one card is not a particularly impressive way to do things.
But by the way, there might have been something better than the exchange earlier, because we saw the exchange and we kind of said, like, okay, there was all that thing, but like, Oko maybe should have made the Goose into an elk. Instead of
the sacrifice, or the exchange. Yeah, you might be right there.
I mean, there is a free, and you don't have much of a board presence, which is the trouble. But I don't think Bursavich really needed another Gilded Goose, so it was kind of a tough call there. I'm still uncertain as to what the right line, but I just wanted to point out that it was an option.
Oko has like a million loyalty all the time, so what's -5 here or there? It's fine, don't worry about it. All right, we're going to elk the food here, says Bursavich.
But Pozzo is ahead. With Bursavich drawing another land and not having access to Hydroid Crisis, I mean, Pozzo's a little behind on...
Are so good. They really are. Like, there's so much back and forth. We thought Bursavich was winning. He had really, really good interaction. Pozzo played around it as masterfully as he could. He's manipulated the top of his library. He's put himself in a position to really succeed and pull further and further ahead. When 5 minutes ago, we were wondering how Bursavich, how it could possibly slip away from him. There's so much meat on these bones.
And it really came down to Pozzo deciding to keep Veil of Summer. That meant that Bursavich was never really able to take down Pozzo's Oko, apart from a quite awkward exchange of having to lose 5 loyalty on the Oko. And look here, you need to trump block in order to protect this Oko Fief of Crowns because the food is available. And the thing from Pozzo's side is, you don't know that I really need to have 7 mana untapped with
This is the thing. Either way here, Pozzo's going to get away with it, because what happens is, if Bursavich doesn't block and Pozzo decides to use the food to kill Oko, to put an extra counter on it, fantastic. That's a great exchange for him. If he doesn't, if we see the block here, right, which is what seems to be happening, make a food with the Goose there, says Bursavich, before that goose heads off for the big pasture in the sky. What's going to happen with Pozzo now is he plays this Hydroid Crisis, and the Goose is still there to protect it with the Veil of Summer. Masterful. Yep, masterful. The Argentinian here playing his opponent like a fiddle.
There was actually a really tough call there, though, about with the food. One of the lines was to use the Gilded Goose for mana with the food. Sure, that takes a permanent, but then Austin Bursavich doesn't not have the option to essentially turn that Gilded Goose into an elk and shut down a Veil of Summer in case something like the Noxious Grasp that was just drawn. And I do like cycling the Veil of Summer here. In my view, Bursavich's Veil of Summers are much weaker than Pozzo's.
Much, much weaker.
One of the best it's one of the best answers to Brazen Borrow, but when Pozzo doesn't have it or plays around Veil, it's much worse. But yeah.
Look at this. We're going to see Noxious Grasp, and immediately Pozzo snaps off the second Veil of Summer. Bursavich can't believe it, and now Pozzo ripping through his library with another card off the top. Back to Bursavich. Really, really tough spot for him here, as Pozzo has just gone from strength to strength. He's dominating the board. I mean, Bursavich does have the active Oko, but he's being outclassed.
And it's under pressure between the Wicked Wolf and the Crisis. That's going to be a lot of damage coming towards the Fief of Crowns. And, I mean, Austin has access to another Oko, but, I mean, that's more important. You have access to another Crisis. And if Pozzo draws a relevant spell, you don't have to Crisis right away, but the ability to do a Crisis for 5 would spell trouble.
Bursavich also in a position now where he's starting to run out of cards that really matter in this matchup. We've seen Noxious Grasp already cast. We've seen his Veil of Sun, which isn't at its best in this matchup, admittedly, but he's running out of disruptive elements, which when you're falling behind is a disaster. You need ways to put yourself back into the game.
I mean, the Sultai deck does have a lot of these ways to kind of come back. Something like Massacre Girl on the right board, not on this board.
Sure. But like, as a catch-up mechanism in general, yes.
Right. Casualty of Wards from the sideboard also can do it, but not on this board. This board is actually relatively resilient to the Sultai deck and its answers.
Yes, there's not really a card that kind of tears this one apart. Pozzo will be very glad to have a food back on the battlefield now with that goose. Protect his Wicked Wolf. These creatures coming after Oko. Very important attack here for Pozzo. He's continuing to power further and further ahead here. Bursavich just has to let it go. Down. The Thief of Crowns has finally met his end here.
It's only because another thief stole the crown, but in Austin's hand. But here, that was actually this is actually really difficult. One of the only cards that kind of gets Austin Bursavich back in this game would be something like a Legion's End. Not just because it deals with the Hydroid Crisis in play. It would take the one from Pozzo's hand. But look at the patience that Pozzo has. Rather than run out of Crisis for X equals 4, Pozzo is waiting to get the absolute maximum value from it. Because it's not going to be X equals 4. It's not even going to be X equals 6. It's going to be X equals 8 potentially.
Next turn, yeah, with the Gilded Goose that can make a food this turn. Meanwhile, Bursavich looks to have to content himself by playing some mediocre 3-drop Planeswalker here. It's Oko, Thief of Crowns, the headline act of the weekend's entertainment. And let's see what the play is. We're going to elk the food, or we're going all the way upstairs? Okay, make a little 3-3 here.
Austin doesn't have much of a board presence, so kind of forced to have it. I do like this attack. There's not much that Austin can do to protect the board, so I like this attack going with, you know what, I'm so far behind, I just need to somehow deal the last points of damage to Pozzo life total. And when you see one of these players be behind on the board and do an aggressive attack, you know they're truly well behind.
Yeah, this is a desperation attack here from Bursavich. It may pay off. Time will tell. We'll see what's on the top of his deck. But Pozzo next turn can blast out an enormous Crisis, can be a little more defensive as well if he wants to. Make sure that he doesn't go down. And it's back to Pozzo now, who's been knocked down to 5 life. Let's see what's in store for this turn.
To be fair, with this attack, the Hydroid Crisis from Pozzo will probably be for X equals 6 rather than X equals 8. But it's pretty cosmetic. It's kind of always going to go there. Pozzo here first, likely to take down the Oko Thief of Crowns, then deploy the Hydroid Crisis.
Yep, I think so too here. Let's see what Pozzo does, however. He's the one in the hot seat. An attack with the Wicked Wolf, yes, going after the Oko. And we're going to see food sacrificed to the wolf to make sure maximum damage is put across. So nice way to manage the board of Bursavich here, and of course keeping up plenty of blockers in order to hold off those elks. So here's 8 mana, and this looks to be a Crisis for 6.
And I mean, those flyers are gigantic. There's not really a card in Austin's deck to really deal with this whole board. And remember, Massacre Girl could help, except that there's not really a 1 toughness creature to go for here.
Here's the Veil of Summer, going to draw a card, looking for that Legion's End. That's really all he can hope to do here. But 3 cards off the top here now for Pozzo. Let's see what they... Oh, geez, all lands? No, 1 Wicked Wolf amongst them. He's drawn pretty poorly. Oh, and a Paradise Druid as well. Okay, not too bad, but still not... I don't think that's what he was looking for here. He wanted a bit more business than that. All right, Bursavich off the top. One time. What can he find here?
Legion's End would be a big one, since it would at least force a chump block from Gilded Goose and Pozzo to be in a defensive position, which would help any top deck Planeswalker from Austin Bursavich to have way more value.
He's found Vraska Golgari Queen.
That really doesn't do that much.
It doesn't do that much, no. A bit of a stinker off the top here for Bursavich. I think he's going to be priced into deploying it, however. There it is.
I mean, it does kill the Hydroid Crisis, and and allow some attacks if there's oh, but there's
an
also
Noxious Grasp hiding
Both
out there as
together,
well. Where did that come from? All of a sudden now, Pozzo's going to take a stack of damage after both of those Crazies go down. It looks like the Gilded Geese are going to have to jump on the old Chumperinos here.
And I mean, I would just
Where did that
bash in
Noxious
for
Grasp come from?
Cycle Veil of Summer and hit both cards. I mean, that's what
Wow.
Austin Bursavich needed. And yeah, of course, I think here you have to attack with all Elks, force a chump block, because while Vraska is important to get through cards, one of the lines was to not attack with one of the Elks, so that way Wicked Wolf could attack Vraska, then Vraska would go and the Elk would be available. But you get rid of a blocker in that Gilded Goose, and that Gilded Goose is a source of life, so you'd have to get rid of it at some point.
So, another Wicked Wolf in hand here for Pozzo. It looks like he's got enough mana to deploy both of them here.
The problem is they're in play tapped, and you need access to food. Plus, there's a Vraska Golgari Queen that you can leave pass for one turn, but this is really going to be the critical turn. Sebastian Pozzo is going to try to stabilize this turn, and with an untap, will be able to stabilize. But it's going to come down to Austin Bursavich's next draw step more than anything else.
And this is what we've talked about all weekend. The back and forth, the texture of these games is fascinating. We've had this go all over the place here. Bursavich has rallied. He's fallen behind. Pozzo has stumbled. There's been top decks. There's been decisions. There's been all sorts of stuff. It is really Magic at its finest here with some of the deep decision points that matter for these players. Even if both players are largely playing with very similar decks, my goodness me, the gameplay we've seen all weekend has been fascinating.
And here, I really liked Austin's take of being this aggressive. Austin Bursavich recognized, you know what, I'm behind on the board. I'm not going to win a value game.
A long game, no.
Yeah, no chance. So at that point, I have to put pressure. Because by putting pressure, I can maybe get value from my cards. A Nisha Who Shakes the World is a lot harder to attack when your opponent's at 2 and has to leave a ton of blockers behind.
So Wicked Wolf going after one of the Elks here. Let's see if that food gets sacrificed to it. Yes, it will. Or maybe no, it won't. Yes, it will. Okay, so Pozzo makes it a 4-4, and then it is tapped as well. And we may see perhaps Paradise Druid here, or another Wicked Wolf is an option for Pozzo.
I'm trying to remember if
the Druid.
Pozzo played a land this turn, and that's really critical.
I think he did, because last turn he played a Krasis. He used all of his mana to cast a Krasis for 6.
In that case, you don't actually have access to Gilded Goose's ability. Oh, no. Wow, okay, decides to just play literal...
Just basically a Doomblade. Basically just plays a 4-mana, strictly worse, bake into a pie here.
The green bake into a pie?
Yes, bake into a tree.
This is a risky attack.
Whoa.
So Pozzo going here, you know what? I'd rather you draw 1 card than 2. I'm just going to have to hope you don't top deck a removal spell.
All right. One time, off the top, Austin Bursavich.
Nissa Who Shakes the World, a removal spell, those would do it.
What's he find? What's he found to stay in this quarterfinal? An attack, a block. This looks very bad for Bursavich. It's a Castle Vantress. This means here, Pozzo now given the opportunity to stabilize. And once upon a time, a huge draw.
Right. Once upon a time, something like Brazen Borrower would completely remove Austin Bursavich's board and take over. A Hydroid Krasis would take over. Even a Gilded Goose. That production for Wicked Wolf gaining life is going to mean that Austin Bursavich cannot put the necessary pressure on Pozzo. And you know what that means? Those wolves are going in for the hunt.
Yeah. Those wolves are taking to the woods, my friends. They have got the scent of blood in their nostrils, and they are ready to close this game out. Castle Vantress will give Bursavich a measure of control over the top of his library. However, he is now facing a steep uphill battle as Pozzo settles in for the longer game.
Pozzo, though, out of resources. And if Austin can string the right sequence of cards, might be able to reverse this. But that Gilded Goose looked innocent, but was very tough.
What a game. What a game we've seen here. Game number 3 of the quarterfinal here at the Mythic Championship.
Look at Pozzo's face. Look at that.
He is overwhelmed. Off the top, it's a Hydroid Krasis. That's for 6. That's going to draw a fresh grip, gain some life as well. Bursavich putting himself back in it here. What a timely rip from him. Castle Vantra's putting in some work.
And I mean, not only is this putting Austin Bursavich back on the resource plan, this means now that Sebastian Pozzo is, I mean, very close to dead. That's a 6-6 flyer.
Dead in the air next turn unless we start to sacrifice food for life here. That's what Pozzo's going to do. All right. Buffering his life total a little bit, going up to 5. Now he is the one who needs the spicy top deck.
And you see that sacrifice just in case Pozzo draws a Hydroid Krasis.
All right, finds an Oko. Elking the Krasis, not always the best idea. However, here, forcing it to the ground, even though it's going to give it an extra 3 power and toughness, might be the way to go. Let's see what he does. Going to elk the Krasis there. So, yeah, so what the interaction here is that it becomes a 3-3 elk with 6 counters on it. So it went from being a 6-6, now it's a 9-9, but it no longer has trample and flying. That means that Pozzo is going to be able to contest it on the ground with chump blockers.
And that's very important. You just need to survive. You see as well the food being made right away, just in case Austin Bursavich has access to another Noxious Grasp. That way you get to sell your wolf. But we already seen 3 Noxious Grasps in the graveyard. But there are, of course, other possibilities.
So let's see what Bursavich has in hand here. I can see at least 1 Oko, a Fabled Passage as well. And maybe another Vraska.
It looked like Vraska Golgari Queen to... Wait, is that another Hydroid Krasis?
All right, we haven't got the best view of things here. It is a Hydroid Krasis. It's Gilded Goose, Hydroid Krasis, Vraska, and a Fabled Passage. So all very nice draws here for Bursavich, particularly that Hydroid Krasis.
I mean, that Krasis is probably going to lock the game in Bursavich's favor. I don't think Pozzo can beat this avalanche of card advantage because Pozzo really needed to face 1 draw step to put pressure, and then whatever Austin drew, probably fight through it. But here, by drawing a ton of lands off those Hydroid Krasi a little earlier, plus this one, I think Bursavich is going to be able to lock this one down.
So Bursavich now, with the Krasis in hand, can start to pull further ahead. Pozzo has put up a hell of a fight here. I mean, we thought he had Bursavich on the ropes, but such is this standard format that we're seeing things go this way, that way, and every way. Once again, leaving up 1 green mana here. Draw 3. It's a land, another land, and...
Another Krasis.
Is that another Krasis, or was that an Oko?
It seemed like another Krasis, but regardless, really, I think Austin Bursavich has easily torn the corner and presented another large threat.
Yeah, it is a Krasis, you're right.
I mean, and the next one's going to be larger, and that's what happens when you chain Krasis.
Yeah, yep.
The 4th Hydroid Krasis is in Bursavich's hand, and I think that's going to lock it up. I don't see... The problem with these in this matchup is it's really hard to kind of deal damage with anything but a flying creature because a flying creature has evasion, and with Pozzo drawing into a land, I think that pretty much sums it up. Austin Bursavich is going to be able to deal those last points of damage very rapidly. And look, I mean, Nissa Who Shakes the World is just probably not good enough.
No, even the power level of this enormous Planeswalker is going to make it, is not going to be enough for Pozzo to put himself back in this one.
And one thing is, a lot of these Simic decks do play Mass Manipulation. That would allow them to reverse a situation like this. Something like a Mass Manipulation in Pozzo's deck, you know, you take a Hydroid Krasis, you put on the pressure, and you might get enough creatures to get there. But here, that's not a card in the deck. I think Bursavich has this locked down mostly.
So another Krasis pinned to the earth there thanks to the Oko activation. But Bursavich's got a full grip. You can see it on your screen there, how much he's got to work with. Krasis, Druid, and a Vraska. So he's got plenty of options and plenty of mana as well. Man, this is the same game, let's not forget, where, I mean, this game has gone on for donkey's years, and it's the same game where Bursavich seemed almost destined to lose.
I mean, it took 1 draw step. That Castle of Ventress may not have been the removal spell to take over the game, but it did go into a Krasis, go into another one, and go into yet the last one, the 4th one.
A stunning, a dramatic reversal here for Bursavich, who has managed to turn this game on its head, and now it's Pozzo all of a sudden, who is having to deal with staring into the jaws of defeat.
And here, Bursavich is just considering, like, you could do another Hydroid Crisis for, I believe it's X equals 8 at this stage. But Vraska destroying Oko Fief of Crowns means that the last Hydroid Crisis will likely stick to having flying, and that will allow Austin Bursavich one more turn, especially with the Paradise Druid in hand, to draw even more cards and establish more of a board presence.
So here's Vraska, the Golgari Queen. Another powerful reason to play black, of course. Splash for black cards, likes Noxious Grasp and Casualties of War. Another one here, the Golgari Queen. And Paradise Druid as well to round out the turn for Bursavich. Back to Pozzo, makes a food. But right now, swimming against the tide is the Argentinian. Kept the Nissa on top. Going to wake up an island as a 3-3.
I guess there is one alternative for Sebastian Pozzo. This Nissa can't really be taken down by the current board. So if Austin Bursavich does not draw an answer to Nissa Who Shakes the World, which, considering the number of Noxious Grasp play,
I think he's only got one left.
Right. And Pozzo top decks exactly Hydroid Crisis in order to draw. I'll do the math when we get there.
But it's a lot. It's going to be a high number, my friends. It's going to be in the upper boundaries of the numbers that we've discovered as a species. Speaking of which, Bursavich now has the Hydroid Crisis in hand, newly joined by a Once Upon a Time. He may pull the trigger on that now that that Oko is off the battlefield.
And pretty much do so because it at least threatens this Nissa Who Shakes the World and continues the value engine. Noxious Grass may be out, but even these, I mean, these are 9/9 elks.
They're big, big elks. They've been hitting the gym. They're not skipping leg day. Their antlers are just as swole as all hell. That's what happens when an elk goes to the gym, by the way. I'm a biologist. I know these things. Here comes these 9/9 elky boys.
And obviously with Pozzo at 5, you're not attacking Nissa Who Shakes the World. Since if I was going to get rid of a Planeswalker, I would probably target the one plane cards.
Yes. So we're going to see an attack now. I think the double block with the Wicked Wolves means that Pozzo is going to trade his food tokens for that 9/9 elk here.
And that's why you didn't see an attack before. It's Bursavich didn't really want to start making headway, but a single food here will be sufficient to take down the 9/9 elk, since you have to deal the damage to the first blocker once you order it. So you make it a 5/5. You have the 5/5 below. That elk is going to go away at the cost of a food, which honestly is a great trade.
Yeah, it's actually a really good trade. I thought it was maybe going to cost both of the food tokens, but no, of course, with the extra +1/+1, of course, that wolf should be tapped. Very unlikely to be relevant right now, but all the same, you know, I don't think both players seem to have missed it, but again, not a super relevant attribute on this board state here. There we go.
As you see, it's just clean. It's nice to do it clean, but yeah, look at this, a Hydroid Crisis
for 8.
And you see it for 8 and not 10 because Austin Bursavich is hoping to draw that last Noxious Grasp in the deck.
So 4 cards off the top, a couple of lands and a couple Planeswalkers. I saw a Nissa amongst them.
Yeah, as well as an Oko Fief of Crowns. Golgari Queen can still draw a card.
Oh, yes, of course. There's been no activation of the Vraska just yet.
It killed Oko, I believe, last turn.
Last turn. Maybe sacrifice. Yep, here we go. We may sacrifice a land here, draw a card, gain a life.
It's interesting how important food is that you sacrifice a land over it. But yeah, drew another land. So Pozzo has one turn. If Pozzo bricks this turn, it's pretty much over. Austin Bursavich will be able to take down the Nissa, and it would be very difficult for Sebastian Pozzo to come back from Nissa plus Oko in Bursavich's hand in this dominant board state, because at that point, Oko could start making the Wicked Wolves just into Elks, and it's not going to be enough. So Pozzo really, really wants that Hydroid Crisis.
All right, off the top. Here we go. One time.
There are 2 in the deck. Once Upon a Time can help you get them.
Nope.
Yeah, and that's... well, it's a bit of a dud, but...
that is what is known in the business as a bit of a dudski there. Unfortunately, Sebastian Pozzo didn't find what he needed, so now he's got to do some quick calculations here and figure out how he wants to keep himself in this one. Mobilized District, the draw, there it is. It's going to be woken up, of course. And becomes a 3/3. Pozzo can pay 3 mana to make it into a 6/6.
And there is technically on Pozzo sees a Gilded Goose that can block 2 damage from the Krasis and allow Nissa to be at 1, but Austin would be able to locate that and simply turn the Goose into an Elk with an Oko, or use the Vraska, or use Vraska Golgari's Queen's ability. Really a lot of ways to make sure that this Nissa who shakes the world is taken off the table. Since again, with the food token, it's not really a way to go for Pozzo's life total here.
Once upon a time, the play from Bursavich here. And he's just going to get a land. Must have been a pretty unimpressive once upon a time there.
We saw already 4 Krasis go through and a bunch of creatures, so there may not, they very genuinely just not be many cards that Bursavich can get. Like, look, you look Sebastian Pozzo looking at the graveyard because it is that relevant. The game has gone on that long that now you're just trying to, you're just counting the cards that are left.
So a lethal Krasis in the air can be mitigated by the sacrifice of the sacrifician of those food tokens.
Some very sad food tokens.
Yes, that's not.
They know they're about to be eaten.
It's not a happy pie, yeah. Well, it's the destiny of all food to be eaten, I would say. So I don't know how unhappy they should be about it, to be honest. Do you think food likes getting eaten? You know, like in Toy Story, how toys are meant to be played with. Do you think food is meant to be eaten?
Depends on the food.
Deep philosophical questions we can maybe come back to another time. Here's Vraska Golgari Queen. Sacrifices a land, draws a card. Bursavich still looking for a way to push through lethal perhaps this turn. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it.
I think Cake wants to be eaten. But, yeah, Nissa who shakes the world, Oko Fief of Crowns. It's just a matter of time before Bursavich can really take over. Step 1, get rid of Nissa who shakes the world. Step 2, get rid of Sebastian Pozzo.
Yes, yeah. It's a two-step program. It's remarkably effective. Impress your friends and bamboozle your enemies with this two-step process to winning Mythic Championship quarterfinals.
And the reason killing the Nissa here, even though you might be wondering, wait, but doesn't Pozzo have access to a lot of mana? Wouldn't a Krasis still be good? Technically true. However, Pozzo does need to keep untapped mana just to be able to sacrifice these food tokens, and that's why. At Pozzo's life total, you need a lot of mana untapped to just make Austin Bursavich's attack less relevant.
He's got so much mana with that Nissa, and he's all dressed up but nowhere to go. With all of that mana available.
We already used all the X spells in the deck.
Yeah. Yep. There's not a lot of options remaining for Pozzo here. It's an unfortunate state of affairs for fans of the Argentinian. Here is Oko once again.
Yes. So what did you tap for cast to Nissa?
I had a black floating and then I tapped 4 mana. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, tap 4 lands. One of them had already been sacrificed to the Vraska there.
Still worth checking because it can be really complicated to.
Yeah, it's certainly confusing. Yeah.
I would say, yeah, good play from Austin here. Elking, making the Gilded Goose into an Elk. Obviously, a food will come first. But that means that Nissa, who shakes the world, will go down. And with that, with Sebastian Pozzo having an empty hand, I don't think there's a card in the deck. Mass Manipulation would have been the answer. It would have been really beautiful here. But it's not in Sebastian Pozzo's deck. And I don't think a Krasis is going to do it because Pozzo would have to keep up so much mana in order to survive a lethal attack that it's not going to be big enough. And then I think Austin's got this one again.
I mean, we've said that a couple of times.
It does take a while. So the thing is,
yeah.
Austin's just, has to do this. It isn't an immediate victory. It's just a resource one. It's very hard for Sebastian Pozzo to deploy resources in a way that is profitable.
Ooh, another Nissa off the top here. But again, that's not going to get him back into this.
It's basically free that gains 8 life.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Just soaks up some more damage here for Pozzo.
One line was for Pozzo not to deploy it, try to have it with the Krasis, but yeah, I mean, that's enough.
It's enough here for Pozzo to pack him up after realizing that there's basically no way out. Bursavich had taken control of the board after a long and hard-fought battle between these two. But ultimately, the Sultai food list was able to best the Simic food list. It was looking really good for Pozzo there for a while, but a string of tidy little top decks from Bursavich changed the texture of that game. So that is that for our third game in that quarterfinal. We'll be back, of course, to bring you the result of that game. And we'll be checking back in with Andrew Cuneo and Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side of it. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you back here live from Richmond in just a few moments.
What a game. What a game.
Hello, hello, my friends. Welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship VI. My name's Riley Knight. I'm joined by Eduardo Sajgalik. And in the feature match area, we're going to check back in with Andrew Cuneo and Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa. Paulo, of course, one of the most famous players of all time. He's got 500 million top finishes, and he's won 500,000 of those. And on the other side, Andrew Cuneo, one of the unsung heroes of professional Magic, a masterful deck designer, one of the support staff, I would say, of some of the best players in the world here. And these players are going to get underway just as soon as we're ready here. Looks like Looks like Paulo is off to the races here, and Cuneo also getting stuck in with an edge wall innkeeper. That's the perfect turn one start from him.
Right, but Paulo has a really good answer with Paradise Druid into Wicked Wolf. Although, you only get rid of one of the tavern owners.
And that's the answer. That's the big brain play, playing a second one of them. And now we're also going to see, oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. The value train is chuffing out of the station. Flaxen Intruder, draw 2
And
on
it was
that 1/2 body.
And there was another innkeeper in those 2 cards.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Andrew Cuneo. Here we go. The indoors have been flung open. One of the staff is going home early after an unfortunate animal attack, but
That's a lot of lands. So Cuneo's really going to deploy that innkeeper, probably going to deploy that giant killer, but really, really wants to keep the cards flowing.
Yes, indeed. Well, this is a good way to do it here. Another adventure card, meaning that 2 more cards come off the top of the deck. This is huge here for Cuneo.
And another giant killer. That's
Oh
2
my
more
goodness.
cards.
Oh my goodness. He has drawn 6 or 7
Do we have the
extra
Venerated
cards
Loxodon
already?
to close? Do we have the Venerated Loxodon to make it? It's okay.
Does not.
Just
All right.
nutty, not completely bonkers off the charts.
That's the real next level play there, finding the Loxodon and pumping up the jam for the entire team there. But still, there is night and day difference between this deck of Cuneo's with and without Edgewall Innkeeper, and Edgewall Innkeeper in multiples is bonkers. One of the big problems with aggro decks, especially go-wide aggro decks, they have no source of card advantage. They've got no way to recover in a long drawn-out game. But here we're seeing Cuneo, even with a developed board, still have a chock-a-block hand.
Right, and that's why you play that draft chaff, as you so lovingly call it, because it draws so many cards.
Hey, Edgewall Innkeeper's not draft chaff, buddy. That is a pack one, pick one. Fairy Guide Mother, on the other hand.
What about Flaxen Intruder? I actually saw Cuneo make wolves at one point. Bears,
make
sorry.
bears?
Yeah, but yeah, I like this from Paulo. Remove the innkeeper.
Yep.
Clearly recognizes that that's really the only card that matters.
Absolute spot-on threat assessment here from Damo to Rosa with his Oko, elking this innkeeper.
But drew a shepherd of the flock.
Okay, that's
you get to return the innkeeper and continue the flow.
Yes, indeed, and of course with that other after the Usher to Safety has resolved, of course, you've then got a 3/1 that's going to draw you 2 cards when it comes into play. Cuneo, an embarrassment of riches for him. He is ready to continue to push forward.
Funnily enough, while Cuneo has not missed a land drop, mana is the constraint.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Even on turn 4, he's like, geez, I can't play all these cards in my hand.
And that's the thing. Cuneo really wants to draw into one of the 3 spells, either Conclave Tribunal or having access to Loxodon, Venerated Loxodon. I love this attack because you know you're returning the innkeeper anyways, so why not see what happens? Because this is going to make the Wicked Wolf block, and we're going to see a really interesting interaction because Cuneo has to pass priority here for Paulo to be encouraged to sacrifice the food. But it makes sense to sacrifice the food here. So Cuneo gets a food off the board this way. It doesn't look like much, but between Gilded Goose and Wicked Wolf, getting any amount of those food tokens off the board is great.
And it's just
really
free.
heads up play from
It's
Cuneo.
just free, right? Because you were going to bounce it anyway, so you may as well try to, chance your arm at it. Here's the Edgewall Innkeeper on the way back down, and there's the Shepherd of the Flock, another 2 cards. While playing White Weenie with 9 or 10 permanents in play, Andrew Cuneo is going to discard to hand size.
An Unbreakable Formation, a really important draw, because that's going to allow a large board pressure, but the top deck negate from Paulo, Vitor, Damo, the Rosa going to put a wrinkle in that plan.
Yes, things may change there, although Cuneo does have Flower Flourish in multiples in hand, so he's got another way to make his team huge.
And I really like the Paulo boarding in negate in this matchup between March of Multitudes, Flourish, Unbreakable Formation.
Even Conclave Tribunal.
Yeah, there are targets that are really important to get.
A lot of I think negate is actually a great bottleneck in this matchup because it means that Cuneo can't rely on these slam dunk huge big cards. For example, March of the Multitudes. You tap out for that, it gets met with a negate, and you feel like the silliest idiot on earth. Now we're going to elk this innkeeper once again here. Tale as old as time. Back
the innkeeper becomes an elk. Once upon a time, the innkeeper became an elk.
Yep. And now, with 8 cards in hand, Cuneo considers his options. Plenty of lands, plenty of spells. You've got to look at what he's working with there.
The Love-Struck Beast would cost quite a bit of mana. I don't think, in a spot like this, the 1/1 is still relevant, even though you know, Cuneo would be able, would probably not be able to attack with a Lovestruck Beast anyways with a Flourish. Since at that point, the Lovestruck Beast, well, it's 7/7, that's great, but the other creatures are too large.
Yeah, well, I mean, even with Unbreakable Formation or what have you, there's lots of ways to prevent the Beast from attacking.
But the thing is,
watching Netflix, feeling sorry for himself.
But it does draw a card.
So Lovestruck Beast makes a human.
And I kind of like this. The Innkeepers are going to become Elks and essentially get larger. So Cuneo prioritizing card draw first.
Yep.
There is the option to go for Once Upon a Time and try to get to a cheaper adventure creature, but you're not certain. And that Once Upon a... The other option is that Once Upon a Time hitting something like Venerated Loxodon.
So Cuneo trying to figure out if he's played a land for the turn. I think he has.
Definitely has, yes. Neither player has missed a land drop.
Nope, and Damo Rosa on the play this time after having lost game 3. Yes, indeed. So there's the Unbreakable Formation. This may prompt a response from Damo Rosa. 1 card in hand for the Brazilian. We know what it is there. It is. It's a negate. See if he pulls the trigger on it.
I like the Unbreakable Formation here. Paulo has 1 card. So it's either a counterspell, which it is, and if it isn't, that's a large board state that can probably put either Paulo or Oko down a bunch. With 7 creatures, actually, it would have gotten rid of Oko Fief of Crowns.
Well, and it's a free attack anyway, right? Because they're all indestructible. They've all got vigilance.
Yeah. But with Flourish in hand, you want to get that counter magic out of the way to pave the way for an even larger attack, especially because Paulo's going to be incentivized to transform that Edgewall Innkeeper into an Elk. And Hydroid Krasis seems like the very obvious pickup from those 5 cards.
There it is, yes, taken off that Once Upon a Time. But now the damage has kind of been done with the Edgewall Innkeepers, and that's the threat of these adventure decks. The 1/1 comes down so early, draws cards at a very appreciable clip, and even by the time you've answered it, sometimes they're already 3 or 4 cards deep. That's what we saw from Cuneo this game.
I mean, Paulo answered it very quickly. Turn 3, we saw Wicked Wolf. Every turn, Paulo has transformed an Innkeeper into an Elk with Oko, and it still wasn't enough. The combination of Shepherd of the Flock, returning Innkeepers, making sure that the cards kept flowing, gave Cuneo this board and the mana to cast a flurry of flourishes. That said, Flourish doesn't give indestructible, so we might see trades. I do like Paulo running out the Krasis. Paulo is really under pressure and needs to deal with the board. We may even see Paulo forego the Innkeeper in order to bolster defenses here. But I still think that given the information and context, Paulo has to transform the Innkeeper into an Elk, but this is really rough. A Flourish is going to be a problem. And that's why you see Paulo thinking Flower Flourish is definitely on his mind.
So Flower Flourish, for those of you who don't know, the flower, of course, picks up a basic of Forester or Plains for 1 hybrid green-white mana. Flourish, which you don't see cast anywhere near as often as Flower, provides an overpriced bad overrun, basically. The creatures get +2/+2. Don't get trample or anything else like that. But hey, when you've got a board, when you've got 8 creatures out, you'll take any effect like that and do great work with it.
And it's one of the strengths of the Selesnya deck is you get to play a card that's slightly worse than Selesnya Guildgate, but with the upside of potentially being a game-winning spell. And that is definitely worth running in your deck.
So Edgewall Innkeeper is actually traded now with Oko. Traded for a food token. And so now Cuneo, with, of course, plenty of ways to push through damage, thanks to that double Flourish in hand.
A really nice line, actually, from Paulo to trade that Edgewall Innkeeper. It's 1 less attacker for Cuneo and 1 more blocker for Paulo while dealing with the Innkeeper off the table. And again, the Wicked Wolf large enough at 4/4 to block a wide variety of these creatures that will become free 4s thanks to a Flourish.
Well, what's the play here for Cuneo? He's in a tight spot this turn.
So Wicked Wolf would eat a creature here, most likely a Giant Killer. But then Paulo can't really do many other profitable blocks. The other question is, do you go after Oko Fief of Crowns or not? It's really difficult to actually take Oko Fief of Crowns because you have to over-attack with a bunch. So Cuneo instead is going to develop the board. I'm actually a little surprised to see the Lovestruck Beast here just because it doesn't synergize very well with a Flourish.
No, it doesn't really do anything. Can't attack. The Flourish is a sorcery, so if you're wanting to do that, you need to do it before you attack. And now we're going to see a Conclave Tribunal here. I'm interested to see what it's going to go after. Maybe the Wicked Wolf? No, just Oko. Okay, all right, makes sense.
Need to get rid of that. Wicked Wolf is just a creature. Oko does everything. It's creatures. It creates indestructibility for Wicked Wolf. It is mana. And a very patient play from Andrew Cuneo. Perhaps, actually, maybe playing the Lovestruck Beast, not for board position, but simply to tell Paulo, look, I'm playing Lovestruck Beast because I don't have Flourish. Flourish would be a good play, I understand. But I'm going to play this Lovestruck Beast even, you know, I don't have Flourish, you know, because I'm playing this Lovestruck Beast clearly. So maybe trying to bait Paulo.
Misdirection, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. So Cuneo still with a Once Upon a Time in hand. He left up a very suspicious 3 mana rather than just 2.
Generally with free mana, you see max. With the land question earlier, Paulo can probably easily see Andrew Cuneo having a Once Upon a Time. I'm a little surprised that the Once Upon a Time wasn't fired, just in case it found a Venerated Loxodon.
Actually, that's true. Well, Cuneo's holding it, saving it for a rainy day. Probably cast it before he untaps.
Oh, sorry, Venerated Loxodon wouldn't be able to be cast anyways because you have to tap 2 mana. So sorry. Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, Oko, I mean, you saw Cuneo use a Conclave Tribunal on Oko on 1, so you know that Paulo drawing another Oko is not great news for Cuneo necessarily. But I think here what's happening is Cuneo's trying to set up this Giant Killer to get rid of Wicked Wolf and clear the way for a beautiful Flourish.
All right, well, right now it's the actions with Damo Rosa as he makes a food token with his Oko.
Your turn, tap Wicked Wolf.
And there it is. Tap Wicked Wolf instead of casting Once Upon a Time. And now do we start to see that big split card play here with Flower Flourish having an impact. Wicked Wolf, of course, the best blocker for Damo Rosa. At the moment, it's a confusing board state. He's only got 3 blockers. 4 blockers, excuse me. One's hiding under that food token there.
Andrew Cuneo, still quite patient, decides, you know what, this isn't the moment. I want to activate my Giant Killers twice and really have the best possible board position. But you're facing Oko Thief of Crowns, but still decides to go for Once Upon a Time, hoping for something like Venerated Loxodon.
Shepherd of the Flock.
Shepherd of the Flock also unlocks options by being able to return an Edgewell Innkeeper and then drawing cards.
Let's see if that's the direction in which he wants to go here. His hand a little light on action apart from those flourishes now, which again, as we've discussed, he's been very, very patient in deploying. Very patient indeed. Here's a free attack with these 3/3s, or 3/1. There's 3/3, 3/1, and a 5/5, of course, able to attack as the human.
Wow, this is a really good spot from Cuneo. Essentially, Cuneo is trying to get value from this Lovestruck Beast and clear the board a bit so that the Flourish isn't a spell that would put Cuneo in a good position. It's a spell that will end the game. And that's why we're trying to offer trades. But then the creature's gone. It's actually kind of an interesting line here from Cuneo. I think it's to get value from the Lovestruck Beast and the Giant Killers.
So, Damo Rosa lines up the blocks here. Looking to make some trades, as you mentioned. Wicked Wolf out of the equation thanks to the Giant Killer.
And yeah, with no pump spells in the deck, Paulo's pretty comfortable with Oko going from 6 to 1.
Fairy Guide Mother, of course, offering only a pump spell only at sorcery speed.
Fairy Guide Mother, not the fastest in its blessings.
And now the trades.
Why is the Lovestruck Beast in the graveyard? Okay, fine. Attacks sometimes happen, and then all right.
So wrong creature put in the bin there, but seems to have been straightened out. So now Cuneo still with that Edgewall Innkeeper, still with that Shepherd of the Flock in hand.
And now we see a really clear board state. The 2 Giant Killers can essentially tap down the remaining creatures, but Oko's going to start making some Elks here.
Oko only taken down to 1.
And even if Paulo draws nothing, you have access to making food, Castle Ventress. Probably declared an attack there rather than passing the turn, since Oko wasn't activated yet.
Giant Killer taps down the Wicked Wolf, saves Cuneo a little bit of damage. And we're going to elk the food once again here from Damo Rosa. Make a 3/3. So Cuneo can return a creature, or a permanent, I should say, with his Shepherd should he so choose, but no, instead it's just the elk being tapped. Now, how much damage can this flourish put through if that's what Cuneo wants to do?
With, again, the Love Struck... actually, the Love Struck Beast can attack because Cuneo drew another one. So at that point, you can make an extra 1-1
After
to get
the
through.
flourish is resolved. Wow,
Right.
that's a techie play there.
But decides, no, just to put the Oko off the table. This is a lot of patience on Flourish.
Yeah, he's just holding on to it like he's bloody Andre Strasky with a mass manipulation here.
And Paulo drew a Wicked Wolf and decided not to deploy it.
So no option here for Damo to Rosa other than to let Oko dite the bust. And dite the bust he does, hitting the bin.
To adventure Love Struck Beast.
And now here's the 1-1. So that actually takes that techie flourish play you were talking about off the table, but it does put another 5/5 on the battlefield.
Your turn.
Cuneo ships, leaving 4 mana up. I wonder what he's planning to do with that, Eduardo.
Here,
Those giant killers are really, really putting in some work here.
yeah, but with the amount of food that Paulo can produce, there's not much that the Giant Killer can do. What it can do, though, if you return it, is tap down Wicked Wolf. Wait, we could just activate it.
You could just activate it.
It does get rid of a food token from the table, which is still relevant.
Yeah, just tap him down. This is why Cuneo's leaving up that mana. He's attacking Damo de Rosa's board in an unconventional but highly effective way right now.
I mean, Cuneo is ahead and has been ahead for a while, but can't seem to really punch through. Getting rid of Oko Fief of Crowns was quite large there, but the problem is that attacking Paulo's life total in a way that's relevant is very difficult.
And now that elk can't attack as well, of course, because of the Love Struck Beast. Another Wicked Wolf is going to go after the Giant Killer here.
But this is going to be a nice deployment of Shepherd of the Flock, able to get back the Giant Killer and save it from the Wicked Wolf.
Back to Cuneo now. Is this the turn? Is this the fabled turn upon which we'll see Flourish cast? Let's find out.
This turn, it would not make too much sense just because of the amount of creatures in play, the Love-Struck Beasts not being able to attack, and a lot of defense on Paulo's side. Again, Flourish being good on wide boards, and this board doesn't seem wide enough to me.
All right. We can go yet wider.
These two and the fourth one.
So Love Struck Beast, and then we're going to have Giant Killer tap down the Wicked Wolf.
Cuneo's really trying to get as much value from these Love-Struck Beasts as possible.
Yeah,
It's actually pretty impressive.
before they're invalidated by the Flourish here. So that's the attack.
Second main.
Damo de Rosa chumps with an elk, takes 5. Shepherd of the Flock comes down, and this all began. You know where this game was defined on turn 2 when that Edgewall Innkeeper was played, when double and then triple Edgewall Innkeeper put Cuneo ahead after developing a board. Damo de Rosa's been playing catch up since then. He's done a very good job of it. But the power of the Edgewall Innkeeper, his legacy remains even after this is finished. And another Shepherd of the Flock, ushering that Giant Killer to safety. Wicked Wolf not having the impact that Damo de Rosa wanted it to have.
I mean, and here, a lot of Wicked Wolves and a lot of food are going to make it very difficult for these Love-Struck Beasts to go through. So Andrew Cuneo going to have to go back to a wide board, but that favors Paulo. More time definitely favors Paulo, especially now with Oko Fief of Crowns coming again for the third time.
So one is already in the bin, as you can see. One in exile underneath that Conclave Tribunal.
Are we trying to do Hedron alignment?
Oh,
You know, one in each zone.
Oko alignment. All right. Well, if PV can reveal his hand during his next upkeep.
But yeah, the Flourishes now have a lot less value because the board is way smaller. They have less value. There are more blockers on Paulo's side, and those blockers survive and kill the attackers. On top of that, you need a 1/1 to get in there with the Love-Struck Beast.
So while this game continues, we're sort of lost in the weeds a little bit here. We're actually going to have a live look in on our back table. Austin Bursavich and Sebastian Pozzo are in the thick of things, as you can see there at the top of your screen. And we're going to have a quick peek as to what's going on between these two. Pozzo leading 2-1 currently. And with an active Nissa and a huge Hydroid Krasis facing down a Wicked Wolf and an Oko, things might be looking pretty good here for the Argentinian.
I mean, they look extremely good here. You also have a mobilized district that can come around and rumble.
Here's Vraska from Austin Bursavich, but that may be met with a mystical dispute here. And a concession from Austin Bursavich, so far behind that Sebastian Pozzo can and does win that game and, of course, the match. Congratulations to Sebastian Pozzo. Huge moment for him as he finds himself in the semi-finals of his first Mythic Championship top finish there. Congratulations to him. A battle well fought. As for Austin Bursavich, well, you can't win them all, my friend. Pozzo, very well fought indeed.
And for Pozzo specifically, I managed to talk to him before his match, and he said this quarter is really important because he believes that by winning that quarterfinals, he puts himself in the absolute best position towards the Worlds and MPL race.
Yeah, wow. So that's going to be really, really key for him. So congratulations, Sebastian Pozzo. We'll be seeing more of you in the semi-finals. And commiserations to Austin Bursavich, who led the Swiss and really had a rip-roarer day yesterday. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. We head back to our first table now. Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa and Andrew Cuneo. As you can see, PV leading the charge 2-1, but Cuneo rallying magnificently in the last couple of games. And right now, we're passing some pretty complicated board states. And for that, my friends, I'm very glad that I can pass it over to Eduardo, the expert.
Here, we probably saw a Giant Killer end of turn that tapped a Wicked Wolf. And then an attack, even with the 1-1 humans, just because these 5/5s were worth it. And Andrew Cuneo has played this really masterfully, keeping the Flourish for a position where there might have been a board stage from Paulo where you wanted to trade up. But with Paulo at free life, those Lustrous Beasts have done a lot of work. And now Cuneo, even if it's not a lethal attack next turn, can set it up. 2 Giant Killers, tap 2 Wolves. Next turn, Flourish, and if you draw a 1-1, lethal. But Nissa shakes the world. Yeah, that's more blockers.
All right, so providing another blocker here for Damo Rosa as he wakes up a forest with his Nissa.
And now Paulo is really alive. A Hydrate Krasis off the top might help Paulo stabilize this game. Again, because it's additional life. It's additional card draw. And Nissa shakes the world allows you to Paulo to do both the card draw and defense.
So Damo Rosa with an Oko activation. Having trouble navigating the twisted mire of a D12. We've all been there.
Paulo might be considering transforming a Giant Killer into an Elk. So while technically that makes another lethal threat, that's 1 tapper less. And that allows Paulo to cement a better board position. At least that's what I feel was a consideration in this spot.
So Damo Rosa makes a food token, passes the turn, back to Cuneo, untaps in a great hurry. He's ready to do business. Let's get this business deal done, he says. And right now...
The thing is, without a 1-1, we have 6 attackers facing down a sacrificed food and 5 blockers. So Paulo would survive a Flourish, but Cuneo, while drawing a land, it was a Castle Ardenvale. So there is a line here available for Cuneo. Play Castle Ardenvale, make a 1-1 end of turn, tap 2 creatures with Giant Killer. And then next turn, we're still a mana short off doing Flourish into a token from Castle Ardenvale, but tapping 2 creatures plus that extra 1-1 might make the difference. But this is a lot of food from Paulo. This is a lot of mana. It's going to be really hard for Andrew Cuneo to go over the top now.
A lot of moving parts here, but one really important observation. We know the Oko decks can go long. It's one of the defining characteristics of these decks is their ability to hustle and bustle in the late game. Usually a deck with 1 mana 1/1s doesn't play well in past like turn 10, turn 20, turn 4,000, wherever we're at right now. This is the exception to that rule. Andrew Cuneo's list is doing a great job of going late.
As far as I can tell, yes. But one thing is that one of these Flourishes not having been deployed, I mean, I would rewatch this game and wonder, was there a turn where a Flourish might have been the play? Just to have dealt pressure to Paulo in a way that now is really difficult to do. These cards are rotting in Cuneo's hand.
Yes, the opportune moment may have passed here because Damo Rosa is building up his defenses.
There is one option, which is that Cuneo could go to 12 mana and just cast both in one turn.
That's also, I mean, we're getting close to it, aren't we? How many lands he got out? 9 so
plus
far.
1 in hand, yeah.
All right.
It's very unlikely, though, because enough turns of Nissa and Oko will make even that plan not work.
So, tap down the Wicked Wolf here. and tap down something else as well. Looks like it's going to be Wicked Wolf #2 and a little 1/1 human. And now, Cuneo. Again, Flower Flourish, not much of a combo with Lovestruck Beast, but maybe he'll find a way out of that.
That was a Fairy Guide Mother.
Well, that solves that problem. He can Flourish, then cast the Guide Mother here.
He can also tap down the Gilded Goose to guarantee a ton of damage here. And it's worth it, because Guide Mother on something like Lovestruck Beast is 7, except if you play Flourish. One second, how much mana do we have access to here? 2 for Giant Killer would tap down the Goose. That would leave 6 mana for Flourish, and 2 mana exactly for Guide Mother, but not casting it, which means that Lovestruck Beast couldn't be played. So Cuneo's going to have to choose between the options.
So either attacking with everything, but not guaranteeing the damage in the air, or just attacking with a flyer to push through guaranteed damage once the goose has been tapped down.
But with Paulo having access to so much food and potentially life, I wonder if Cuneo's calculating if Paulo can die this turn. That's the most important part. But if not, there was always the option to Fairy Guide Mother the Nissa away.
All right, here's the Flourish. So that's going to take these Lovestruck Beasts out of contention right now. They can't attack. Here's the Fairy Guide Mother, going to send a Giant Killer up into the sky. Very thematic approach here. And there's the 1/1. So now we can attack with everything, including the Lovestruck Beast. And you know what? Once again, Andrew Cuneo says, blocking is for nerds. You take care of it, Paulo, old son. I'm going to sit here and let the numbers fall as they will. This is a huge attack. All of these creatures have got +2/+2. The Giant Killer on the right has an additional +2/+1 and flying. Eduardo, again, I've said it before, we don't have numbers that go this high. How much damage is Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa facing down?
The key is 2 creatures with free power going through and not being able to sacrifice food for every additional one. So there are 9 attackers, 5 blockers, and for each creature that went on block, Paulo past 2, you have to sacrifice the food. Not able to do it.
Not able to do it. Andrew Cuneo, I tell you what, he waited till the opportune moment. He'd been listening to Captain Jack Sparrow talk about that, and as a result, he picks up a game win in this quarterfinals match here. Quite a stunning victory, really. He definitely took his time in terms of pushing that one across the line, and now we are down to a 2-game versus 2-game decider between PV and Andrew Cuneo.
And it's for all the marbles, that semi-final berth waiting for them. And it's down to 1 game.
One game.
And I mean, we've seen it. Edgewall, Innkeeper, really the way for Cuneo to push forward. You've seen the games without Innkeeper and you've seen them with it.
Huge difference between
and it's
the
2 games with and 2 games without.
Exactly. We're going to hope, of course, for Andrew Cuneo's sake at least, he finds those Edgewall Innkeepers early in the next game. But right now, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with the deciding game of this quarterfinals after this.
I'm here with 2-time world champ Shahar Shenhar, and we are going to crack this pack of Throne of Eldraine. He's chomping at the bit here. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. I won't keep you in anticipation anymore.
Love opening
Ooh, you
packs.
use the teeth method.
Yeah, I tried doing the other one, but this is actually better for me.
Okay, so here we go. We're laying out the cards. Let me know if anything is catching your eye as you lay them out.
Theirs didn't say please. Forever Young could be pretty good. Weapon Rack, one of my favorites. I'm joking. All right.
All right, our
And
rare Iron
goat
Crate
token.
Pyromancer. Oh yeah, the goat token. You've got to consider
This pack
it.
has some pretty solid uncommons with the Marrowleaf Pixie and the Savvy Hunter. But there's also Ironcrag Pyromancer, which is really good. Very good play around. To have that first pick is kind of awesome because you can pick like Thrill of Possibility or Haggle and really make it work. Opt. This is a pretty tough pick though. I think I would take the Pyromancer just because it's a better play around, but Savvy Hunter and Pixie are also quite strong.
How do you like the Draw 2 deck in this format?
I think it is good if you have the right enablers, and Pyromancer is the perfect enabler. Like it doesn't really work if all you have is like the Improbable Alliance and you just opt, and it's not the best. But if you have Pyromancer, like that is the reason to play that deck. So yeah, I think this pack I would take the Pyromancer.
How do you feel about green? A lot of people have been telling me it's their favorite color in this draft format. Do you have a preference?
I do like green, and I like blue as well. Black's pretty solid too. I actually really like black-green and just playing foods, which is why I really want to take this Savvy Hunter. But there's a Pyromancer, and I think it's a better enabler for the deck.
I mean, you've got to say which one wins in the arena, and I think the Pyromancer beats the Savvy Hunter.
Yeah.
Under the right circumstances.
Definitely true. They're pretty good together, too. I mean, if you have two foods in play, and then you can sack, draw a card.
Oh, all right, we're doing it.
John Food
John them
Pyromancer.
out. All right, here we go. Iron Craig Pyromancer. Pack one, pick one for Shahar Shenhar. Hey, we've got Gabriel Nassif here to open a pack of Throne of Eldraine for us, so go right ahead.
Cool.
What are you thinking as you open this pack? Do you have any favorite colors, any favorite cards? What do you want to open?
No, I like it. Most of the colors. I think I usually do. So not anything special. I was liking green a lot, but now I'm kind of open to any colors. I know some of my testing teammates are more like some colors better than other, but.
All right, here we go. We've got kind of an interesting rare here in Sundering Stroke. I don't think I've ever opened this card, but for you, what do you like?
Yeah, I actually had the choice between Sundering Stroke and Red Cap Melee. The other day I was already drafting red. Red Cap Melee is the uncommon, a red deals 4 damage. If it's not red, you have to sack land. I took the Stroke. I think it's close. I think maybe the good uncommons and maybe Bacon to apply is better than Sundering Stroke, but it's right about there. I think it's like very good common, good uncommon power level kind of a card. So yeah, I mean, this sticks out. Searing Barrage is another very good card. Good common, but not the greatest pack, not a bomb, obviously. I don't think Sundering Stroke is bomb level, so it'd be kind of tough. You know, you have 2 good red cards. There's Charm Sleep, it's pretty strong. Sage of the Falls pretty strong. Shield Breaker is pretty strong. And then I think maybe Merrily Fratter is the next best one. So
I mean, this is 7 mana.
Yeah, exactly. And usually when you're red, you want to be the aggressive red. I think the good red decks are mostly aggressive. So 7 mana and your aggressive deck's kind of weird. And kind of awkward too, like maybe 3 of the 5 best cards are red.
All right, I'm going to hold you to it though. What are you picking?
First pick, first pack. That'd be really. I hope I don't open this pack at the PT.
We're getting it out of the way now.
Yeah. I might just still take the Sundering Stroke. Maybe you can end up splashing it. Put on the spot. Yeah, I'd probably just take the Stroke, even though you're passing some good red cards. I think it's a bit stronger than the rest.
All right, Sundering Stroke is our pack one, pick one. Kind of regrettably, but we're going to take it and see what happens here for Yellow Hat.
Welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship VI, live from Richmond in the United States of America. My name's Riley Knight, joined by Eduardo Sajgalik, and on your screen, we have 1 semi-finalist remaining to crown. And it's going to be one of these 2 fellas, Andrew Cuneo on the left, Paulo Vitor Rosa on the right. Paulo's on the play after having lost 2 on the trot. But he won 2 on the trot before that, Eduardo, so it comes down to our 5th and final game.
And it's going to depend on how those openers pan out. Both players really want that strength. And they both started with their best green 1-drop, Gilded Goose and Edgewall Innkeeper.
And I'd say that Edgewall Innkeeper provides such a huge advantage, a huge edge, if you like, here for Cuneo because of the cards that you can draw. But Damo Rosa with a very important answer.
Right, has the choice between deploying Oko Fief of Crowns and going plus on Edgekeeper to turn it into an Elk, or going for Voracious Hydra. The reason this is a close decision is Paulo doesn't have an untapped blue source in hand. So Voracious Hydra would be the cleanest answer. No board presence for Cuneo. But what would your next turn play be? Make a food with Gilded Goose? And that's what Paulo's considering is the sequence. There's definitely an answer for this Edgewall Innkeeper. It's just that Paulo is trying to do it in a way to do the best setup possible.
He's going to go for the Voracious Hydra here, take out that Edgewall Innkeeper. But as you mentioned, unless he finds a blue source, he's not going to be able to cast Oko next turn. He's got the Temple of Mystery, but that means that at the earliest, we're looking at a turn 4. Oko. Let's have a look at Cuneo's hand here. Very late game heavy. Venerated Loxodon, March of the Multitudes, and now a Flower Flourish. Going to find a basic for him, but Cuneo was kind of all in on that Innkeeper there, and even without adventure cards.
Well, you pointed it out. Even without adventure cards, it turns out Cuneo played the Innkeeper and is normally a really dangerous card. I completely understand from Paulo's point of view to get rid of it, and even if you thought there was the potential to draw into it, but now it really stymied Paulo's development. A Voracious Hydra is way less powerful than something like an Oko Fief of Crowns. However, that said, Paulo will be able to deploy Nissa, who shakes the world. But Andrew Cuneo's plan, get March of the Multitudes, make that unbreakable formation, get a Venerated Loxodon, and take down the game that way.
It's funny because Damo de Rosa kind of pulled out all the stops, as you say, to deal with that Edgewall Innkeeper, even though the Innkeeper wasn't going to do anything. Cuneo didn't have any adventure cards. He's just found a Guide Mother, but you know, Damo de Rosa playing, you know, obviously correctly in dealing with that Innkeeper, but ultimately it actually wasn't that big of a threat as he thought. In any case, Damo de Rosa is actually putting Cuneo on a clock here, getting in with not only the 1/2 Voracious Hydra, but also now a Forest for 3.
And the
Cuneo, however, can start to deploy more creatures to the board here. And I like this. A Love-Struck Beast, we may see Venerated Loxodon.
And the clock here, I mean, the Love-Struck Beast was nice in that it allowed a 1/1. That kind of helps Conclave Tribunal rather than a land. But yeah, Cuneo is on the back foot, missing that land. And it's going to be really hard for Cuneo to push the board position. But it's really down to Paulo. That pressure is important because, interestingly, I think Paulo is the aggressor, not the long-term player. Cuneo with too much of the Multitudes would take over in a fashion that Paulo would have a lot of trouble essentially dealing with. So this way, Paulo's the aggressor. Paulo needs to deal as much damage as possible, as fast as possible. And that Conclave Tribunal taking care of Nissa was very important.
Quite a dramatic role reversal for these players. Cuneo looking to play the long game with double March the Multitudes into Venerated Loxodon, into Unbreakable formation.
And Paulo recognizes that role. Play Oko pre-combat, turn probably the Voracious Hydra, or... well,
the goose. The goose into an elk, get in for a huge stack of damage here. This is remarkable. Damo de Rosa has recognized his need to be the aggressor, to be the beatdown. And after another post-combat goose, that makes a lot of sense with that elk decision now. He's pushing through maximum damage.
And that Oko's still in play. That's a lot of damage that's coming down. With freeze coming next turn, as well as a Courtesy 1/2. It's going to mean that Cuneo kind of has to block at least 2 creatures, and that means no Venerated Loxodon can really be deployed. Something like Unbreakable Formation, not really that strong because you can only block... I mean, you could technically block 2 creatures with your 2/2s.
Doesn't advance your board position, however. No, it doesn't even make him 2/2s.
Right, so decides to play the Love-Struck Beast just in order to at least eat one of the free-frees. But if Paulo decides to simply attack... and the Love-Struck Beast blocks the free, then Oko can actually kill the Love-Struck Beast.
Yes, by elking it, yeah. Because it'll have 3 damage marked on it. So let's see what Damo de Rosa does here. Cuneo between a rock and a hard place here. Damo de Rosa picking his spot excellently. I mean, this is why he's one of the best players in the world. He identifies that he needs to change his role. He identifies the need to occupy a different position in this matchup. I would have said 100% of the time, Cuneo is going to be the beatdown. Cuneo is going to be the aggressor. He's going to be the one getting on the front foot. But here... Damo de Rosa has proven us all wrong. He is the one wanting to get on the front foot and push through that damage, and he's doing it right now once again.
And you can see how much, and Paulo has decided to give up a bit on board position and focus on damage, and you can see that with the decision to push an other elk into combat rather than attacking free freeze and transforming down the Love-Struck Beast.
Cuneo's on 6? Yeah. When did that happen?
Temple Garden, a bunch of free freeze, 1/2s, it all adds up.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Damo de Rosa flipping the script here, forcing really Cuneo to chump block. And it's only going to get worse from here. What can Cuneo find off the top?
And now I understand why the Goose and not the Hydra was elked. It's because Paulo was thinking, the only card that really stops this offensive is a Love-Struck Beast. So I prefer making a free rather than a 4/4 since, anyways, that will get incentivized. So it's better to go a little wider, keep dealing that 1 point of damage by 1
through the extra bit of damage. Exactly. Now, Cuneo can try to keep his head above water here with copies of March of the Multitudes, but the thing is, you want that March of the Multitudes to be the door slamming in your opponent's face, not you desperately treading water to try to stay in the game here. So Cuneo not just dead, but I tell you what, he's not far off it. This is a very, very tough spot for the American here. And he's going to think about what he wants to do. You can see his hand. Venerated Loxodon is another way to add to the board, but it's not a good defensive option here.
It's just not an option. Venerated Loxodon would leave Cuneo dead. Since there would be just enough attackers, you're forced to tap something like Fairy Guide Mother. Sure, that'd be nice, a 5/5 and a 4/4, but then you die.
You just don't get an untapped step. Andrew Cuneo is on 2 life. He is going to have to rely on March of the Multitudes. And let's not forget, Paulo Damo Rosa has brought in answers to it. Cuneo will be sweating like nobody's business here.
Also, Paulo could just draw spells.
That's what I'm saying. If he draws just a negate, that's it. Game over.
Or a Nissa, or Hydroid Crisis to reload. Like, Paulo, as long as Paulo with the board currently as is, drawing absolute blanks, still pulls ahead.
Still way ahead, exactly, even with 2 lands in hand. Here is Oko once again going upstairs, going to elk another food here. More damage coming through. Cuneo forced to chump block here. We're going to see March of the Multitudes to keep him alive.
Here, a March of the Multitudes for 2 might be the best line. You get to block... Would that actually work out? Yes, it might. You get to kill an elk that way and block the other 2. Going back to free, since, again, the 1-2 Hydra would go through. I think doing it for free tokens means you're not trading, so I think we're going to see a March for... Oh, for free?
Okay, March for 3 here. Out they come. Going to buffer his life total a little bit, send him back up to 5, of course, because all of these warriors, they do have lifelink.
I don't think there's a block where these 3 aren't involved in combat. And at that point, you kind of have to just jump free elk, so...
Yeah, it's not advancing his board position. That's the problem, right?
I'm kind of surprised, actually, that Cuneo decided to tap the Lovestruck Beast, since that would have been a way... I just think straight up, Lovestruck Beast on top would have been a way to kill an elk.
All right, Cuneo goes down to 1 here, but then gains 3 and back up to 4 with the lifelink on those warriors. Paulo Damo Rosa ships it back to the MPL superstar here from America, Andrew Cuneo. A long and deep run he's made at this Mythic Championship, but Damo Rosa, his end boss right now by the look of things. 4 cards in hand for Cuneo, 5 cards after the draw step.
And I mean, playing Fog is not a winning line when you're the...
No, he hasn't. That's what I'm saying. He hasn't advanced his board position at all, Eduardo.
I mean, yeah, pretty much it.
Temple Garden off the top, not a good land for him to draw. Doesn't want to halve his life total for that extra mana. Ships the turn, another March of the Multitudes, desperately once again treading water.
But that's another elk.
Another elk because of Gilded Goose here.
I mean, it's just trading water, and Paulo is always ahead. Paulo's drawing absolute blanks, but by being aggressive, has managed to essentially...
Incredible. An incredible performance from one of the game's all-time greats, recognizing, somehow plucking the information out of the ether that he needed to get on the front foot, he needed to be aggressive, and he needed to attack, especially with that Voracious Hydra, poking in for a single point of damage every turn. It's been decisive.
Right. The Gilded Goose still had utility. It made food, but the Hydra, not doing it there, meant more damage. And that damage has really mattered because it means that Andrew Cuneo could never at any point not block everything.
Here are the blocks once again. They're going across. Cuneo up to 7 with those blocks, takes 4 back down to 3.
And I mean, you could draw another March of the Multitudes, but that's not doing anything against another elk.
Oh man, this is tough stuff here for Cuneo. This may be it.
Also, by the way, Voracious Hydra would have been open to Giant Killer.
And that, my friends, Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa, after one of the most incredible performances you are going to see this weekend, identified his position as the beatdown in that game and absolutely did a number on Andrew Cuneo, winning in 3 games to 2. What a performance.
Yeah, right. In 4 games of Magic, Paulo was on the defense, always going, okay, I'm going to survive. I'm going to eventually overpower you. That game, Paulo, no, wait a second, I'm the aggressor. Let's go. Let's get it done. Because that gives less time for Andrew Cuneo, which means those March of the Multitudes, rather than being deployed to win the game, were essentially the card Fog. And that's not a way to win the game of Magic.
Not a way to win games of Magic. So hats off to Paulo Damo Rosa there, but also well done indeed to Andrew Cuneo, one of the most underappreciated pros on the scene, I have to say. So make sure to, again, props given where they're deserved. Andrew Cuneo, a very worthy quarterfinalist here in Richmond. Our semi-finalists have assembled. We are going to get across all of the decks, all of the personalities, and of course all of the matches before very much longer. But right now, we're going to take a quick break, reset. We'll be back live from Richmond in just a few moments, so don't go anywhere.
We've got Seth Manfield here for a pack 1, pick 1 from Throne of Eldraine. Crack that pack, Seth.
Let me see if I can open this up. Yep. All right.
All right, as you lay these cards out, let me know if anything is catching your eye.
Well, you didn't say please, but I'll go ahead.
You got me. You got me. That card's name's got to be one of the best of all time in Magic. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun counterspell for sure. So we've got our commons here.
All right, we've got some good stuff. Outmuscle, Ardenvale Tactician. You mentioned didn't say please. What's going on over here? Ooh, we've got a Mythic Outlaws Mermaid.
So yeah, this is an interesting pack. I'm not really sure what to take. Oh yeah, well.
Oh wait, this busted Mythic right here. This card's super fun to play with too, isn't it?
To play with, but
Yes.
not to play against.
No.
Because I mean, you basically can't beat it if you play it on turn 4 and you just make an army of creatures. I mean, it's a pretty busted card. Obviously, it's a 2-color card, so you have to be Boros to take advantage of it. But like, such a good card. I'm just taking it. The unfortunate part about this booster is like the next best card might just be another red-white card.
Yeah.
So you might be putting the person next to you into Boros. So like, if this wasn't in the pack, I might just take the Inspiring Veteran as my other pick. But
Do you like it better than an Ardenvale Tactician?
You know, that's actually a pretty close pick. I think Outmuscle, Tactician, Inspiring Veteran are the other cards that I would. I think I'd take Outmuscle as the next pick. So like, maybe this isn't like right next to my opponent, but or next to the person next to me. But yeah, pretty sweet pack. Joust is kind of nice as a way to removal spell, get rid of other knights. It's funny because like, there's a bunch of good cards that are like go in the Boros deck. Because once you take a Boros card, you're most likely going to be red-white aggro knights. Like if you're red-white,
You're not playing aggro knight control here.
yeah, I mean, and then it's kind of hard to have a 3-color deck. So super powerful card, and I'm just gonna.
Hey everyone, we've got Reed Duke here, and we are going to crack this pack of Throne of Eldraine and find out what your pack 1, pick 1 is going to be for the format. So go ahead, Reed, do the honors.
Here goes nothing.
All right, as you're opening it, let me know what card do you want to open more than anything else sitting down for your draft at the Mythic Championship.
Garrick, please.
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
Wishful Merfolk, 7 dwarves. 7 dwarves worth paying attention to. It's, you know, if you get them early, you give yourself a chance to get lucky. Outflank is pretty good. Smitten Swordmaster, also pretty good. All right, so now we're getting to the uncommons. Claim the Firstborn. No, thank you. Cauldron Familiar is good if you get it with Witch's Oven. Okay, Sir Eleonora the Discerning. That's a front runner for what I might pick out of this pack. And then Castle Embereth is the rare. Great in a red deck, but not necessarily something I'd first pick. And then we have foil Rosethorn Acolyte. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not too bad to pick up a 7 dwarves early just in case. But
Are you really taking it pack 1, pick 1?
Not in my perfect world. I think the real standout card here is going to be Sir Eleanor the Discerning.
What do you want to keep in mind if you're taking this for your first pick?
Well, what's great about Sir Eleonora is she can just go in any blue deck, you know, control deck or something where you want to curve out. It's just a great value creature on turn 5 for pretty much any deck with blue mana.
All right, say she's not in this pack here. What would you take instead?
7 dwarfs. If I'm going to start with an unexciting card, I'd like it to be something with what we say high upside. You know, 7 dwarves might not be an exciting card, but you know what? None of these cards are that exciting, so maybe I get lucky and finish with 4 or 5 copies of the card.
Have you ever had 7 dwarves in your deck?
No, one time I had 6 about halfway through the draft, but I couldn't find the last one.
All right, no dwarf for us. We're going for Sir Eleonora the Discerning here with this pick 1, pack 1 with Reed Duke.